Some of the content of Patriots Unfiltered may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
The world's original podcast.
Welcome to Patriots Unfiltered.
Game management coordinator, which is becoming a lot more popular, that teams have somebody with that title on staff.
Calling, Paul.
You shouldn't be that person, but you should start a training school for those people.
Why shouldn't I be that person?
No, you be the Tom House of training in-game decisions.
Yeah, I don't think people grow up thinking, you know what I really want to be in life? I want to be a game management coordinator.
Parcells says, listen to me. Everybody has a price. My wife has a price. And if the price is good enough, she's gone.
But that's a tough line about your wife, man. I wouldn't.
I know. He's the one that said my wife doesn't know if it's puffed or stuffed. So,
but they're a playoff team if the quarterback is healthy. They went 7-10 without him.
You think Johnson will get involved in the selection of the fingernail polish color? We're going to do a lot of running this week. I go with puce.
Well, they got Commanders too now.
So getting back to where we started, it was the worst outcome for me because the Bills and
Getting back to me.
So would you have scholarships in your school?
This is Patriots Unfiltered.
Presented by Toyota's official website for deals, buyatoyota.com.
All right, welcome to Patriots Unfiltered. It is Thursday here at Gillette Stadium. We got a big show coming up. We got picks, so we got to hurry. You know, we got two games we got to pick.
We'll get through.
We got Mike, we got Evan, we got Paul. Alex is still out, but from what I hear, we have the first sell copy for the Paul Perillo School of Game and Clock Management.
Oh,
do we?
wow.
So that'll be.
I
that'll-
did not. I'm not aware.
That'll be in the newsletter.
I'll be looking forward to
for
this.
tomorrow.
Okay.
And I've been neglecting promoting that newsletter. We do have a newsletter that is all the back of the house stuff for Patriots Unfiltered. It's fun stuff, and all you have to do is go to patriots.com/PU newsletter and sign up for it, and you too can receive the newsletter every Friday. Alex puts it together, but it's full of great stuff. So go to patriots.com/PU newsletter and sign up for the newsletter today, and you can get the sell copy for the Paul Perillo School of Game and Clock Management.
All right.
So,
I think I kind of like that.
all right.
Jess made the newsletter last week.
Yeah, I
She
saw
was
that, the
in
cartoon.
I think she was a little lukewarm reception. though,
Yeah,
huh?
Yeah.
she came around too.
I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought that was a good cartoon.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
nice little joke.
Good
It's
stuff.
always a good joke when Evan's thinking about football and Jess is wondering what is he thinking, but she must know you're thinking.
Oh
about
no,
football
she's not
all the
wondering.
It's like,
she
what
knows.
is it called, like in entertainment, when you do that? Like you have like the same punchline, you know, it's like that's you use for a lot of different jokes, and it always gets back to the same thing.
Oh,
That's
like
not a
there's
thing.
a callback.
That's not a technique.
Callback is one. Like that's a. But I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
Speaking of
yeah,
that, we
think
were
about
talking before the show. When you get rejected for a job in like Hollywood, like what do they call that? What do they call the piece of paper that they give you that like they mail you?
Oh, I don't know. A rejection slip? A rejection letter? I don't know.
Well, I was told they were pink slips
Pink
because
slips?
I actually literally have
Yeah.
pink slips from Saturday Night Live and the Letterman show.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I don't know. That's you guys are peppering me with Hollywood
But I know
questions.
pink
I don't know
slips
the
were
answer to.
also,
Yeah,
as
Mr.
Paul
Hollywood.
said, when you get fired, you get a pink slip. You know,
Right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that sounds right. No, I wouldn't know. I only
you only got jobs. You
So
didn't
it's
get
not.
rejected.
So it's
No, I
not
got
a Hollywood
rejected.
thing that Fred, you know, maybe just it was special for you. You
not
got
that
a
I'd
pink
heard, but
slip.
those might be creative jobs, and I was more at that point
Yeah.
on the behind
Because
the
haven't you heard
camera
people
stuff.
say I have a drawer full of pink slips when I was looking for jobs?
Oh,
Mike,
no, not really. I mean, no.
Mike was in charge of handing out the pink slips.
That's probably pretty close.
He was crushing
Yeah.
dreams,
No, I mean, it's
not chasing them. He was
it's not
crushing
fun
them.
being an actor and having to go on countless auditions and just walk in front of a room
Everybody in LA thinks they're an actor.
or a writer, a screenwriter.
They're like, you know, your waitress, your
wait.
Uber
Oh, yeah.
driver. You're like, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm an actor. Uh-huh.
Would you like an app? Would you like to look at my script?
What are the specials?
Yeah, no, that's it. But that's also
That's
I'd
a
say
brutal business.
one
I
of the
don't-
cool things
yeah,
about
I
that
don't
I liked
envy that.
living out there. Initially was just there were a lot of people out there chasing their dreams and trying to do stuff like that, whether they're musicians or actors or screenwriters. So you do meet a lot of people like that who have left their hometown and are trying for something, and a lot of them end up moving back to their hometown.
Most of them. I mean,
That's
yeah,
right.
It
most
does
of
bring a nice creative energy to the area, though, because everybody's kind of, trying to make it and has like some
I
drive.
think it would be
and-
exhausting after a while. Just
Yeah,
like
it's-
everybody you talk to is like, well, I'm, waiting tables, but I really want to,
Right. Well, you go into like any coffee shop at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday when most people are at work and it's just packed with people like, what do you people do?
Yeah.
yeah.
waiting for a callback.
That's true. There you go.
Nice.
All right.
See what I did there?
So, what's on people's minds? Something that is on my mind, and I know we've talked about it before, and he has talked about it before, but Tom Brady had, again, statements about the quarterback protections in the league and how he's very strong about, once you become a runner, you should lose those protections.
Yeah.
It's just not fair to the defense. And, I think most people agree with that. But I understand, the need to protect the quarterback and the ability to still be able to give yourself up. But I think maybe you tweak that sliding rule a little bit because it really is unfair. I don't know if anyone else heard what he had to say yesterday.
I didn't hear what Brady had to say, but yeah, I mean, I would agree with the premise.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can still allow quarterbacks to slide, but maybe they not be so willing to throw the flag if there's contact,
Yeah.
And I think that there were times that they did that, even in the playoffs this week. We were talking about, Lamar Jackson took a couple of hits, but I feel like people look at it as Mahomes is afforded protection that, like, Drake May didn't get. When
Right.
he slid late and got a concussion against the Jets, he didn't get the penalty.
Yep.
Does anybody doubt that Mahomes would have gotten a penalty on that same kind of a play?
Well, the helmet's red, so it show it.
good.
You can see it better.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
No, I did see Mahomes, I think, too, said, I shouldn't have done that a little bit earlier today. Walk back his diving a little bit. But I agree. I mean, I just think it's funny coming from Brady, who I think a lot of people attribute to him being the quarterback, where a lot of these protections started to
Yeah, but
come
he
into
ran
place.
four times in
Well,
his career.
yeah, that's why,
right.
him
Well, that was
saying,
kind of the
they
start
shouldn't
of
be
it,
afforded
though.
this protection. Well, you didn't need it. You were in the
Yeah.
pocket, and
Right.
they wouldn't.
Yeah.
And by the way, they changed the rule for you in the pocket.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, he was kind of the start of the influx of rules to really protect the quarterbacks, right? Before 2001, 2003, those areas, it was kind of free for all. I mean, some of those hits you see on some of these quarterbacks now, where it's like, that's assault.
I get it. You're in the pocket. Your eyes are fixed downfield. You're in a vulnerable position. Plus, you're the most important player on, whatever team it is. So I get the behind the line of scrimmage protection when throwing, but I agree when you're running, you become a runner. Now, I still believe that the quarterback should have the ability to give themselves up. It doesn't have to be.
That's why I said you can keep the slide.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a slide. If you go down the ground, but maybe they tweak the rule to say you have to give yourself up with at least 5 yards between you and the nearest defender,
How are you going to adjudicate
well,
that?
I know, but I'm just trying to think of ways to still give the ability for the quarterback to give themselves up but still give the defense some chance. You're going at full speed. Quarterback's going at full speed, and all of a sudden he goes down, and how do you stop yourself in midair?
And that's why I say you can allow the guy to slide, but you need to be a little bit more lenient for the defenders when they make contact on those situations.
Not so much Al Shazier, was that the guy's name from Houston?
Oh, no. That was...
but it's hard. I mean, you feel for the defenders. I mean, like I said, like last show, so many of the rules have been for offense and to try to protect these quarterbacks. And, at some point it has to come back a little bit just to give them a little bit of leeway because it's all for the quarterbacks now. Mahomes kind of knows what he's doing. He's kind of taking advantage of it. So I'm a defense guy. I'd like to see it.
I don't like that Mahomes takes advantage of it, but I do like the protections on the quarterback because I'm not here to watch your backup quarterback.
No, that's true.
I'm not here to.
And that's why it's there.
I'm not here in the
know.
NFC Championship game on Sunday. If Jaden Daniels gets hurt, we're all going to be bummed.
What I don't like is, the defensive player going in with, again, we talked about this, with arms to the
launching.
side, helmet for like a missile. He's going for a hit rather than a tackle. Now, I get it. I forget what, it might have been Brady again talking about, listen, you want to jar the ball loose. You're not going to do that by just waving at the guy.
Yeah.
You need to hit him to try to jar the ball loose. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, unless you're trying to inflict punishment on the quarterback and get a hit on him. And I mean, those plays that we've talked about a lot. Those plays are so frustrating when you got great coverage on a 3rd and 12, and it looks, we got him, and then he just squeaks out. Those are really hard ones for the defense.
It's funny to listen to Brady talk about it because he talked about it, said something about it in the game the other day. They called a design quarterback run on a 3rd down. He's like, I don't like those calls. I don't like running the quarterback, and it's like, well, because you didn't run. This is Jalen Hurts, or whoever it was. That's part of his game. He's a running quarterback. So every once in a while on 3rd and 4, they're going to call a quarterback draw, and he's going to run the ball. So I look at it though, and I do agree with a lot of what Deuce is saying, and that this is not going away. Like these quarterbacks in college, they all are mobile. They all can run. They all run in offenses that feature their running ability. So it's all coming up. Jaden Daniels and Drake May and Caleb and those guys are just the start. This is going to be every quarterback from here on out is going to have some sort of running element. So this is going to be a big part of the game.
And it's just like another thing that's different. Fred, when you and I, were watching football when we were younger,
Leather helmets.
Everybody ran the ball predominantly, but when they threw it, it was almost all down the field.
Yeah.
Stanley Morgan averaged 20 yards a catch for his career.
Right.
Did people say when Joe Montana started the West Coast offense and it was all dink and dunk and timing stuff that's not fair. The defenders are too far back and they're just taking the. It's another way to outthink.
Right.
What your opponent's trying to do. And now almost everybody has a quote unquote efficient passing game. If you're under, say, 65% completion percentage, you had a really bad year, or you're one of the few that actually does throw the ball downfield. Evan will give you his EPAs and whatnot. But everybody does that now. Is that not fair? Could Joey Bosa go back? I always go back to that Joey Bosa quote from the 18 divisional round. He's like, I kept getting there in a second, and the ball was already gone. Is that not fair to the defensive lineman?
Right.
That Brady was so good and so smart and so well prepared that the ball was out before any defenders could get to him?
Right.
Of course not.
Yeah.
He was better than you.
Yep. Or he outsmarted
And
you.
as Evan said, Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels, they're going to be running all over the place on Sunday.
Right.
Both of those guys.
And the more slight quarterbacks run the risk of getting hurt more. Josh Allen has more bulk to him. He invites contact, and Lamar Jackson has a different style where he is able to, for the most part, avoid contact when he runs. So you're going to have to develop your style as a quarterback, but that's up to you. And as Brady said, you need to learn to protect yourself. Don't count on the rules to protect you.
Right.
Protect yourself.
I think that's a really fascinating part for the Patriots as we move forward, because watching Lamar and watching Jaden Daniels last weekend, I can't help but think, Drake May got dinged up a lot, as a rookie running around and things like that. And those two guys are 200 pounds soaking wet.
Well, so did Lamar.
And they're kind of perfectly fine, right? And I'm just like, how do you get to that point? Because being able to run the ball is such an advantage for Drake May that you can't just not do it, you know, and you can't hide that part of his game. Because talking about Josh McDaniels, and I've had some pushback from people saying, they can't run him like that, like it's gonna get him killed. And I'm like, well, if you don't, then he's playing left-handed, like you're taking away one of his real attributes that's a real strength of his. So maybe he watches a little bit of Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels and figures out how they kind of like dance around contact and stuff like that, because you have to be able to do that. Like you can't hide them.
Justin in New Hampshire says, Hollywood talk and no mention of the coordinator hires, off-season PU in full effect. It's funny.
We'll get to it.
Because the news cycle is so fast now. Yeah. To us, it happened so long ago. But Justin's right. Yeah. We should be leading off with the fact that Vrabel has filled out his coordinator staff.
Yep.
I
mean, I got a lot of thoughts. I just, I think my biggest takeaway from the last week is that these were just obvious, easy moves, and we're in a media market where you can't just have easy, obvious moves. You have to have.
You can't do the.
You got to have. Last year,
Occam's razor.
Right. And it's Tom Brady carried Josh McDaniels, and so he never did anything here, and then he never did anything elsewhere either, and. Meanwhile, it's like this guy's a really good football coach, and I'm excited to have him back. I'm excited to see what he does with Drake. But, just some of the narrative, it's just everybody, I think everything gets prefaced with like, well, yeah, it was obviously the right choice, but let me tell you all the reasons why I hate it.
That takes nowadays. Did you post your?
Yes.
Yes. So I think I would suggest people read Evan's analysis of McDaniels' offenses. And I think he makes a good case of what he did with Cam Newton. Now, listen, Cam Newton at that point couldn't throw the ball. He wasn't at his prime. But I think Josh McDaniels did some things, and the numbers reflect that were positive with a lesser quarterback. Now he's got a quarterback who can throw and run. Yeah. So let's see. Let's port some of those numbers over to May. And I think we should see some positive results.
I just don't think Josh is rigid. I have the feeling that
I
he's
hope not.
willing to adjust, and I think that's what the way the signs are pointing towards. And I mean, that's a lot of the reporting is right now, that it's going to be about Drake May. Yesterday you heard Chicago's new coach talking about it's going to be about Caleb Williams. We're tearing it down to the studs, and we're going to build it up around him. And I hope and I think that that's what Josh is going to do for Drake as well.
Yeah, you just look at that Cam offense in 2020, and Cam ran it 137 times. Drake May is not going to run it 137 times, but a lot of the schemes that they were running, the RPOs and things like that, are all right there on the film in 2020 of Josh McDaniels doing the stuff that we all look at Buffalo and Josh Allen and say, why not with our guy, right? Why can't we do some of the stuff they're doing with Joe Brady? And they did it all in 2020 with Cam. So, you bring that stuff in. He has the traditional offense that has been successful at different times, but I don't look at Josh McDaniels and say he's going to try to turn Drake May into Tom Brady. I think he is going to do some things that are different and are really not that different for him going back to the Cam year. So I'm excited about it. I hear a lot of stuff, kind of along the lines of Deuce about Josh McDaniels, and I don't necessarily agree with any of it. I think that he's one of those guys that has a lot of different ways that he's called offenses, a lot of different things that he has shown offensively that he can do. And hopefully the Cam offense is just a starting point. Hopefully they can expand on those elements. But to do that in a season where they basically didn't have a training camp because of COVID and didn't have a preseason, there were no preseason games that year. Cam signs in July, and they were up and running by week 1 with an option package that beat the Dolphins in the opener there with Cam Newton. I mean, that was impressive. That's hard to do.
Yep. And then, of course, defense, Terrell Williams.
Yeah. Well, Evan and I were talking a bit about him. I mean, he's been with Vrabel for a long time. He's a long-time defensive line coach. I think what they added to his title his last year with Vrabel, but I think he's a little bit of an unknown commodity, and that's what Evan and I were kind of talking schematically of, the Belichick tree, and even what they ran last year, it always kind of felt in line with that. But these guys in Tennessee and what they were doing in Detroit, it's a little different. It's a little bit more like these 4-man fronts, get upfield, which, we both were kind of saying it's kind of appealing of just playing fast, getting after it, not trying to
violent.
I like that too. But I think he's a little bit of an unknown commodity right now, to be honest.
I think it's just if you just focus on defensive line. I don't know who the defensive line coach will be. We don't have one yet.
No.
But I'm sure he'll have input in there. And that's good news for Keon White, I think. Because it sounds like he might have been unhappy with not just his role, but maybe how he was being coached. I don't know. But obviously, if Barmore comes back, having him in the room, I think can only help those guys.
I mean, I'm with you on Barmore. I still don't know where Keon White fits. It's kind of the same thing for 2 years. I don't know in any kind of defense where he's a 3-down kind of player. I mean, I think he's a good interior pass rusher on, sub packages, but if they're going to run a 4-man front, I mean,
I just don't think Keon White
know?
can be the guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's meant to be the guy.
Which is unfortunate because, I mean, I do think he's got some juice and, some
he
usefulness.
Does, but even coming out of college, college, he wasn't the guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So why do we think that he's going to go to a higher level and all of a sudden become the guy?
No.
Well, no, but, I mean,
It
probably.
happens.
Yeah.
It does happen, but it's
Happened for Seymour.
It's not a lot. Well, I mean, Seymour was a Hall of Famer, but he still wasn't a high sack volume guy.
Oh, no. If you're talking about pass rusher.
was a disruptor.
No, I misunderstood. My bad.
Yeah, but I would say, with the Barmore of it all, if they were to go more to, just a 4-man front, easy fit, Barmore, get upfield, go. That was the big thing with him, to learn him to stop the run and to two-gap and to do all the stuff that the Bill defense asked him to do. But he's an example on the other end of the spectrum for me where, that's an easy fit for me. But at the same token, who are your defensive ends? I mean, Evan was pointing out on Twitter,
Carter.
The big wide 9 guy, lining up with a hand down, just going after they never really had those guys. Unless they make Mark Anderson going way back as somebody who, was kind of that come on and you're just going to put your hand down and go rush the quarterback. But
Chandler Jones at
they
times.
don't have. Yeah. I mean, that's close, sure. But they just don't have those guys on the roster right now. So that's a big question I have of what direction are they going to go in, and are they going to, like Paul's thing, kind of clean house a little bit and reestablish the personnel, or are they going to do what, we're going to just try to see what we have and do our scheme towards what we have right now.
Yeah, just watching back in 23, and I watched a little bit of 22 as well, because I was surprised that they weren't playing more 3-4, just knowing Vrabel's background with the Patriots and as a player and everything.
And under Cornell and Dean Pease too. Those are
right,
and
3-4
guys.
they were playing even front, 4-man down, over fronts, overloads, like all those types of things that those types of defenses do, and they get after it. Like that's the one thing that I think really was exciting to me watching, even in 23 where they didn't have a good season. Like that defense was flying around, like they were competing, they were violent, they were getting up the field. Now it's a little bit boom or bust, right? Like they'll make a play behind the line of scrimmage and then they'll give up a chunk run because they're all up the field. And, if you let it go, you let it go. But I do like the idea, and we were talking about this earlier, Deuce, with the fact that on early downs, if you're always penetrating, now you pass rush on early downs as well. It's much easier and more seamless, whereas in a two-gapping defense, you kind of have to read, okay, is it a run, is it a pass, and now we have to react. Whereas with this defense, it seems like they're just going to let guys tee off a little bit, and whether it's run or pass, we're just going to try to make plays.
You just have to be careful because offenses aren't stupid.
Yeah.
And they have, whether it's a blitz beater or whatever, if it's a straight-up pass rush, it's very easily beatable these days, so you have to kind of mix it up. You have to confuse the quarterback depending on who the guy is. You want to keep him in the pocket as opposed to letting him out, so you just have to be careful with how you're doing it, and it's not one size fits all every game.
Yeah. And Shane Bone's not here. So he was the one calling the plays in Tennessee over the last couple of years. Terrell Williams, I don't think, has ever called plays as a defensive coordinator, so I'm interested to see how that shakes out. Like, is Vrabel going to have influence in calling plays potentially? With Josh running the offense, like he doesn't have to have as much of an eye probably on what's going on offensively. Stretch will be here to run the clock for Paul, right? So like,
I'm looking forward to meeting Stretch.
Yeah. So maybe they
compare notes.
Maybe Vrabel is going to be really involved and hands-on with the defense because that's a tough part of this. Is he's the only guy in Terrell Williams who doesn't have experience calling plays in the role that he's going to be in. So how that shakes out is still important. I think he's going to be able to run the front and he's going to be able to run the defensive line, but does he know the secondary? Does he know coverage? Does he know how to marry it up with the back end? Like, does he know all those things? Well, remains to be seen.
And then, of course, rounding it out, Jeremy Springer is the one holdover at the coordinator level, and he'll be back. They had a good year, special teams, in an overall bad year for the team. So, well, it was okay.
They're middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Middle of the pack.
But I guess they saw, Vrabel must have saw something in him or was told of things that he liked to hear.
I think there's a connection with Vrabel and the assistant.
Yeah, Tom Quinn.
Tom Quinn.
Yeah.
I think they had a connection. I think that probably was the impetus there to keep it as is. I mean, they had a pretty uneven season and special teams.
Yeah.
They had kicks blocked, returns allowed.
I don't know what
penalties.
the PFF grade was. The PFF had
high.
PFF had them too.
Yeah, but
everybody else said middle of the pack.
Well, like in terms of efficiency and grade is obviously two different things. But I would say with their special teams, Tom Quinn being involved still, it kind of feels like Tom Quinn was Vrabel's guy to coach special teams anyways, and so Quinn probably vouched for Springer and said, this guy did a good job, we should keep him, and so they're going to keep the nucleus together there.
Evan and I were laughing, though. We were talking about the stretch guy, and I said to Evan, I'm like, imagine if, like, Paul just loves this stretch guy. Like, this stretch guy is just, like, killing every situational thing. Like,
no notes.
They're pulling out, like, these, like, random weird, like, they took a penalty, but it was the right thing to do. And Paul's like, this guy's the best. We're all saying, look, he's even non-plus.
He builds a shrine to
He's
him.
like, impossible.
So
you could hire him as one of your professors.
33 seconds left, 1st and 10 from the 12. No need to spike here, right? Yeah, no.
Right.
I agree.
You're just sitting there like, no notes.
Chef's kiss. Yeah.
This stretch guy is my favorite.
So, internal, we had a chance to sit down with the three coordinators this morning. Were you guys there when they did that?
We briefly said
said
hello.
hello,
as
We
they
did not
passed
go
through.
in for the interviews.
Oh, you didn't get a chance to listen to any of the questions or answers?
No.
We were not
No,
asked
too much
to do
pressure
that.
on No Socks. We don't, we want to
Yeah.
let him do his thing.
Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I did help, and I know you did as well.
Well, I wanted
With
one of the questions I
questions.
submitted for Josh is what did you take away from your visits to these colleges.
Was that
You know,
confirmed? Did that really happen?
with Paul and Mike.
The thing you made up, you mean?
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Oh, no, yeah.
You know, so I just, I don't know if it got asked, so I haven't, but those will be on Patriots.com today.
Yeah,
And other platforms.
No, I'm gonna nerd out for a second, but like just getting the chance to see Vrabel and McDaniels like back in the Elvis and the Patriots stuff, I'm like, all right, let's go. We got our boys back. We got our guy.
He kind of moves a little bit.
A little bit.
Special breed.
A little bit. Well, we saw Vrabel the other morning. He comes in with his Vrabel outfit, which he's got a style.
Yeah.
The windbreaker with no sleeves and the tight shirt underneath, but had the Elvis on, and yeah, it was we got back home, buddy. Back home. Welcome home.
Talking a little fourth down with Josh for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But he's ready to go. It was good to see him.
I'd say though Josh looked great. Like,
Yeah,
he's lost some weight.
He
looks
trimmed down.
Like he's in shape. He
Ready
looks
to
ready
go.
to go. Yep.
Yep. All right. So exciting times here, and now I guess the next step is to fill out the rest of the assistants.
Yeah.
Now that you have your coordinators, I'm sure they'll have input on who they hire.
The
So
old line coach, right?
biggest hire
That's
left.
a big hire.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a big hire. What assistant or position coach is filled right now? Do we have any?
There was a report of a running back.
Tony
Oh, that's
Hughes
right.
from
Tony Hughes
he
from-
was with the
Jets.
Jets.
Yeah.
This past season, he's apparently the report is that he's going to have the same role with the Patriots, so he's going to coach running backs with the Patriots. But as of right now, there's some Twitter rumor type stuff that I don't think is really
So the only
confirmed.
position right now reportedly filled is running back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reportedly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
far
I
as
don't
I
know.
know.
Maybe we'll see how these games go this weekend, and maybe you get another flurry. But I assume they're going to get the coordinators in position, and now these guys are interviewing,
Right.
and now is when it really starts to come together.
I just think it's refreshing that clearly because of the types of coaches these guys are, they all have connections and they all have like people lined up for a lot of these positions ahead of time. And it's not like last year where they interviewed 12 different offensive coordinator candidates and, had guys kind of leave them at the altar a little bit there with Nick Caley and stuff like that. Like this has all been pretty seamless. And, Terrell Williams, clearly a Vrabel guy being with him in Tennessee. And, we all know about Josh McDaniels, but it just feels like it's, you have that networking ability with this group. And I think that you're going to see some familiar faces on the staff, especially offensively. Like I'm sure Josh is calling all the whole band to get it back together.
That's what I wonder. Is a lot of the guys that were here earlier, that maybe some of the ones that went to the Raiders with them, are they coming back?
Oh,
Yeah.
you think so?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I would assume so.
Shaplinski.
Yeah, Bo Hardegree, Mick Lombardi.
Yeah.
I mean, if I would call Carmen Bricello yesterday and be like, please come back and coach the offensive line. So he's with the Giants. He's their offensive line
So
coach.
do you have to give him a promotion to get him over here? Is he under contract?
Well, they don't. The other team wouldn't have to give you permission,
Right.
Yeah.
unless it's a promotion.
Yeah. So that will be interesting. Usually they don't count like run game coordinator or something like that as a promotion. It's just coordinator would be the promotion. So who they hire for offensive line coach to me is the biggest hire left.
Yeah,
That's a
I
massive
agree.
one.
I agree. That's a critical one. It's a critical one because those guys have to
Dante.
play together.
I wish.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I said it the other day. I mean, I've been here, 5 seasons now. There's been a different offensive line coach every single year I've been here. I mean, Michael Onwenu came here 2020. He's had a different O-line coach every single year he's been here. They got to find a way to break that. And I mean, hopefully this year they land with that offensive line coach that can stick around and, really build something. That's what I was hoping last year with Peters, that this would be the guy,
Right.
and he's a young guy and it's getting his chance, and it didn't work out.
Callahan
So.
pedigree and all that.
It's pretty crazy though. The Bengals hired both the offensive line coach and the defensive line coach from the Patriots, both who were kind of under a lot of flack this year for not great performance, but they jumped right on them. So I guess we'll see how the
Your
Bengals
boy
do.
Sweet Lou went to the Colts.
I
Yeah.
know.
Lou Anarumo.
Yeah, it was interesting that he didn't get hired by Ben Johnson. I know there was a big connection there between the two of them going back to Miami, but it seemed like Dennis Allen's head coaching experience is what put him over the top to give him to Ben Johnson.
I
as
think that's a
young
good
coach.
move.
Yeah.
I mean, Sweet Lou would have been too. I'm not saying
Yeah.
he wouldn't have been. I like Sweet Lou.
Sweet
I
Lou.
think. I mean, they had a terrible year. I'm not sugarcoating
Yeah.
it, and clearly, he didn't have any answers. I know
Yeah.
it's largely on personnel, but it seems like they have better personnel than those results indicated.
Strange when that happens though.
Yeah.
A guy who's very respected and had
Yeah.
a couple good years, and And it wasn't like it was this complex, crazy defense. I mean, it was they kind of
secondary
do what they
really,
do.
really struggled all year.
I hate when that happens because it's so clear that Zach Taylor needed a head to roll for the fact that they didn't make the playoffs, and he somehow skated and didn't lose his
Sweet
job.
Luke.
So it's like someone's got to pay for the fact that we missed the playoffs with Joe Burrow, and it ends up being a really good
It's like
coach.
someone was, I forget who I heard it, but they're talking about like changing coordinators, and the Eagles changed their coordinators, and I'm like, the Eagles fired their coordinators and moved on to 2 different ones.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing. It's
Yeah.
like.
Prediction.
Like the Lions losing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn was the premise. Well, you don't have, you can lose your coordinator, but they didn't lose them on purpose.
Right. They wanted to keep those guys.
They wanted to keep them.
Yeah.
And their defensive line coach. I mean, it's really interesting to see what's going to happen to Detroit next year.
Well,
just
I think
with-
the offensive coordinator is going to be the guy that
Engstrand.
I can't.
Yeah,
Tanner.
that
is
window
that
is
his name?
closed.
Yep.
Yeah.
They had their chance.
It seems like that one would be because that's the one that guy the Patriots interviewed last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Get your fingers out because that window's shutting really fast.
Well, I mean, they're a really talented team.
That,
I
that
mean,
window's
it's-
not closed.
I mean, it's
For Detroit?
You got all the pieces.
Jared Goff done.
I'm with,
Okay.
I'm with Fred on this.
Yeah, but you're very consistent with this. You're not just like you hate Dan Campbell and think he has no clue.
I don't
what he's
hate Dan
doing.
Okay,
Campbell.
hate
I
is
said-
I like Dan
I
Campbell.
wouldn't.
talking
I
to
don't use the
Evan. I
word
know.
hate.
Evan thinks it's all about.
So what's my
Ben John-
motivation?
and I think you're very consistent. This is not
Yes.
a criticism at all.
So what's my
I've-
what's my motivation according to Paul Perillo? For
Jared Goff had a bad game in a big stage, so he can never recover from that.
right.
Right.
Thank you.
He was never that good. To
Let me
begin
know
with.
who else you need me to analyze.
He and what's his name from the Vikings.
Oh, Darnold.
Darnold.
There's a reason why.
Yeah, but Darnold
Yeah.
didn't have like 6 good years in a row.
Yeah.
Like Darnold had 6 good weeks in a row, and then he turned into a pumpkin.
No, it's,
And plus, I don't think that Darnold is done either. I think he'll come back next year. Now, will he play as well as he did under Kevin O'Connell? Probably not.
no, they had their
Clearly,
shot.
that's at least partly due to a great system.
Yeah.
And
Right?
Justin Jefferson.
That's as high
Yeah.
as the Lions
Jordan
will rise.
Addison.
All right.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
guys are kind of good.
Yeah.
A lot of talent there, though. I mean, that's.
But
you know,
that team is too good to just fall apart.
Lions are porked.
I'm not telling you they're going to win the Super Bowl next year, but they're not going to fall apart.
I don't know what their free agent class looks like. I
They
mean,
have-
they got a lot of guys now.
No
Yeah, just been
key
drafting well.
guys that are free agents.
Neither
They
do
have
the
some
Lions.
they have some role guys
Yeah.
here and there.
I know there. I can't say his name. Onzorki, some defensive lineman. I don't know, but he's just having played under our new defensive coordinator.
I mean, there's a chance that the team that they put on the field is a lot better, just by pure health.
yeah.
I mean, they lost so many guys to
Hutchinson,
injury.
Yeah.
Prediction time.
The
Will the
coaching will
Patriots
be
have
big.
a fullback this year on the roster?
100% yes.
100% yes.
Yeah.
Will it be like a traditional true fullback, or will it be Jaheim Bell, who's going to be playing fullback?
That could go either way. Jakob Johnson's just kicking around waiting for the phone call at this point, but I would say that there's a couple guys in this draft too
Scattaboo?
that play fullback that not Scattaboo, but that are maybe more on your side of things, Paul, that can catch the ball a little bit and be a little bit more athletic at that position. The kid from Alabama who I'm blanking on.
More athletic than Scattaboo?
Well, Scattaboo's a running back.
I know, he's pretty athletic.
Yeah, but he doesn't play fullback.
He's like 5'8".
He could.
Yeah.
No.
He goes about 238 or
He's a
something like
running
that.
back.
He's
He's not tall though, right?
Mike Allstott.
No,
He's under 6 feet.
he's squat.
But I just
Mike
wonder
Allstott.
Put
with
some respect on Mike
with
Allstott's
Josh.
name.
I mean, in response to your
I love when you hate guys.
your question, Fred, that you had for Matt, for Josh was, did he evolve a little bit, and does he still see the fullback the same way he did? And I'd say blocking tight end too is part of that. I mean, maybe it's the same player, but has he evolved? Does Drake May's potential make him think about
I'd be
things
curious to
differently?
see how it looks because when you guys were all talking about the different things, I would agree that he has been very flexible when it comes to game plans. I think that Bill was a game plan guy to his core, and Josh did a really good job of, as Evan pointed out with Cam Newton as the example, but he did a really good job of that throughout his time with the Patriots, of being able to win games in a variety of different ways with different plans and different focuses with the offense. I'm less convinced that he is as flexible with his system.
Yeah.
And that I'm really going to be interested in. I kind of wish we had a chance to maybe have a little small talk with him today.
Well, you hugged him. I mean,
Hey,
Maybe less huggy.
Let's keep that off the air. Let's keep that off the air.
Welcome back. Well, I mean, that is now 2 coaches that I've hugged publicly now in the last 2
No
weeks.
kisses though. I mean, you're not
It's a whole
Fred
new
Brady,
Paul.
though.
This is
Yeah.
not. It's not
Gave
good
him
for
like
my
the
image.
back, like the.
Oh wow.
He actually called me sunshine.com.
I know.
He did. There's just so many advantages to the fullback from a blocking perspective in the run game. I'm a big fullback guy, so I love the fullback. But there's just so many different advantages that brings to the table that I think are good advantages that go beyond just we're just gonna run it downhill at people and stuff like that. I mean, he's far from the only guy that utilizes a fullback that's a great offensive coach. I mean, the Rams do it. The 49ers do it. The Dolphins do it. Like, all those trees that we all are obsessed with, they all do it too. So,
Do you think? I just thought of this, throwing it out for the group. When Brady was here and you put the fullback in, they're going to run the ball. But do you think that like Drake May's ability to run the ball as well, like it just gives them a little bit more variation on that? Where if the fullback's out there with Brady, he's probably handing it off to the running back, and they're running
Triple
power or
option.
whatever. But with Drake, I don't know. It just gives you a little bit more options to play with. I feel like with the fullback, maybe you could be a little bit less predictable.
But they're going to run it. Well, unless I'll see who the fullback. Like if it's Jakob Johnson, they're going to run it.
Yeah, right.
If it's James Devlin, they're going to run it. Now, if they have a guy like Evans
Kyle
talking about,
Juszczyk.
some of these more versatile guys, the Chargers, I would put in that category. They have a couple of different size and shapes
Right.
to those guys.
Ravens, they got some of those
the
guys,
Ravens
too.
guy is a defensive lineman.
I mean, but
he's a behemoth.
He's great.
And they're going to run, and you kind of know the Ravens are going to run anyway.
Yeah,
But
that's what they do.
even though they ran it a lot with the fullback on the field, that their play action passing was so effective with the fullback on the field too, and that's a big part of it. As well as just you can mimic the same run plays. The blocking schemes look exactly the same to the defense, and that's what pulls guys out of passing lanes and displaces defenders to open play action. And some of the Cam stuff that they did in 2020, where it was just Cam and the fullback in the backfield. Now the fullback is like a lead blocker for a quarterback run or something like that. I thought those were really nice and creative. Like now you're all sorts of numbers advantages to the play side because you have a lead blocker and then Cam's +1. Like you have all sorts of advantages when you do stuff like that. So I can't imagine that a Josh McDaniels offense won't have a fullback. I think that's a lock.
Mark in Fall River writes in at podcast@patriots.com. He's excited about the new hires. He has questions on both sides of the ball. Mike, my memory of the Titans defense is Jeffrey Simmons being a centerpiece.
Yep.
Aside from the questions about his health, do you think Christian Barmore can play a similar role?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I like Christian Barmore, but I see him a little bit different than Simmons, who, like I said, I mean, I think Simmons can do it all, and I think Barmore is still a little bit of a work in progress against the run. If they switch schemes, maybe, but I don't know. I see Simmons as more of a just every down, impact run, impact the passing game, just a nightmare inside. But maybe with a scheme shift, maybe. But I would say not really.
Okay.
I'd still want to target a guy,
Put him in that 3
DT.
technique. Like, Jeffrey Simmons, like when you put him at the 3 technique, you just let him get up the field and not worry about gap integrity and pocket integrity and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And just,
So maybe it could work.
I think that would be a good role for him, for Christian Barmore.
I do too. I understand what Mike is saying. I don't know that I'm willing to say that Barmore can be as good as Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
that's where I would separate. But
Why not just get Jeffrey Simmons?
in style,
Yeah.
I think and I think he's improved a little bit. It's kind of hard because he lost a whole year more or less. But I think he had shown improvement, in the run game 2 years ago when we last saw him on a regular basis. I think he's more. I think he's closer to a 3-down player, than maybe we remember. But
he might be a 0-down player. I mean,
He's
right
not
now
Jeffrey-
there's so much.
he's not Jeffrey
There's so many
Simmons, though.
questions around him and his health, and kind of having the relapse of the problem. Like I think he's
Even
a huge
when he
question
came
mark
back
right
this
now.
year, he wasn't the same.
Right.
Well,
He didn't seem to have that leg strength and that push.
But
that
I
he
don't
had.
necessarily. I'm not going to say that's why he's not as good as Jeffrey Simmons. Like, he shouldn't have been. Like, he was 3 months probably without really doing any football.
Yep.
Yeah.
On the offensive side, my questions are for Fred and Paul. When Josh last
sit this one
coached
out,
here,
Lazar.
he worked with a young quarterback, and both of you could be classified as unhappy with the results. Fred didn't like that they held back on some of what they did, and Paul just didn't think it was as good as a lot of other people. My question is, do each of you expect similar results, or do you have higher expectations? And then lastly, has anyone figured out what Fred was talking about on Tuesday with the Micah Parsons, J.J. McCarthy thing? I'm still
No,
stumped.
we haven't.
No one knows.
No, I don't even know.
So
yeah.
I would expect it to be better. I think Drake May is a lot better player than Mac Jones. I would expect Josh McDaniels to have more success with Drake May than he did with Mac Jones.
And it's a good question but you have to take it in context. So you go back to that time. Belichick's the head coach. Mac Jones is the quarterback that you just drafted. There's a question as to whether even Belichick wanted this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but maybe he didn't. So maybe he's thinking, he's not that good. Number one thing is protect the ball. Yeah. We're not going to let this guy do what they did this year with Drake May or in 2024, which is allow him to make mistakes. They certainly coddled him. And it's Belichick, I want to win football games. I'm not here to develop this young guy. I want to win football games.
Yeah,
and I think that had a lot to do with it. And so, then you ask yourself, how much influence did Belichick have on Josh that year?
Yeah, well, look at how Mac did once they did let him start throwing around the ball. There were a lot of interceptions. But I thought Paul made a good point yesterday on your shows with Felger and Maz. Talking about Drake May taking on the Josh offense. That puts a lot on the quarterback. And I think, Paul made a point that, Drake May seems pretty bright. And I have hope and confidence that he'll be able to handle everything it seems like Josh is going to put on him. But I do think that that's a big question mark of, is he ready to really get it? The whole offense is going to run through him now.
That would have been my, you got time for one quick question? Just simplistically, do you plan on running a similar system that you've always run, or are you going to transition a little bit more to whatever West Coast version that everybody else is running now?
Yeah.
That's really all I need to know.
Are you going to tailor it to your quarterback?
Right.
But not necessarily tailoring it to my quarterback. The system that he's run forever has been deemed to be pretty tough on quarterbacks.
Yep.
The West Coast system is deemed to be a little bit easier on quarterbacks. Which one of those two are you going to follow? I expect him to be all the things that Evan talked about in terms of creative with his play calling and game planning and all that stuff. Because I saw Josh McDaniels do that, the entire time he was here. They're always going to be a game plan, whatever offense they run. It's not always going to look exactly the same depending on the opponent.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in that. I'm just wondering what he's going to do for the basis of his system, the terminology, what he's asking the quarterback to do in terms of protections and calling out the mic, stuff that we saw for 25 years that we didn't see at all last year. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I have no idea.
That is simple though. That's just, it's on the center, and other systems it's on the quarterback here.
Yeah.
I think that's an easy fix. I don't expect him to all of a sudden start running a Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan offense. Nor would I want him to do that.
I would.
I would like to see him do what he does best. And do, if you're going to hire Josh McDaniels, then let him be Josh McDaniels. Don't try to turn him into Kyle Shanahan. Do what you do. But there are little tweaks to it that I'm sure he will make, and I think he did make at times with Mac Jones to kind of water it down a little bit on a young quarterback. The being in the headset until 15 seconds, with the play clock and things like that, it allowed Mac Jones to get through that rookie season. So I don't expect Josh McDaniels to throw
first half of it anyway.
I don't expect Josh to throw Drake May into the deep end of the pool in terms of the information that he's throwing at him.
It's certainly not going to be where Tom Brady was. And I think he had a quote that I heard. This is going on one of those Fakakta podcasts. I don't know.
I think it was the Edelman one.
When he's talked about, we have buckets full. You guys had buckets full of knowledge, and obviously you're going with a young quarterback. It's like a cup full. I think he recognizes that. I wouldn't, to use Evan's term, he's not going to throw him into the deep end.
He just hasn't seen it.
But I do kind of wonder if the system is maybe a little past its due date.
Yeah, when we talked to, I don't know if we were on there talking about this, but David Andrews coming back, knows Josh's system, knows everything. It's probably, even if it's not so much during the play or calling out the mic or all, calling out the protections, all that stuff's different, but, just understanding the offense and being kind of a tutor for him. I think there's been some speculation about your guy Brian Hoyer being around.
When you another lineman that has, familiarity. He was here too.
So,
see. All right, my food's here. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I have a new rule change for the NFL that I think would
I'm
be
intrigued.
cool. All right, we'll talk about that when we come back.
Isn't it time to get exactly what you want? Welcome to Red Hot Deal Days from Verizon, where you get your pick of our best deals. Like My Plan, where you can pick the perks you want and save on every one. For limited time, bring your own phones to a Verizon store and you can get My Plan for our best price ever. Get exactly what you want in your phone plan and only pay for what you need. Bring your phones to your Verizon store today and get My Plan. These deals won't last. It's your Verizon.
With FedEx One Rate, you can ship to your student for a simple, predictable flat rate. Send a box full of home-baked treats that say, "Your father and I miss you." Or send a box full of instant noodles that says, "Your father and I would like you to stop asking us for money." Either way, one rate fits all. FedEx One Rate. 2-day shipping, one flat rate. Starting at $14.50. Visit fedex.com/OneRate for details. Exclusions apply.
It's time now for another episode of Pats from the Past podcast. Matt Smith and Paul Perillo, joined by the newest member of the Patriots Hall of Fame, Mike Vrabel. And boy, for two people, I know you think we're going to be BSing you, but we were on the table, Mike, pounding every single year. Get Vrabel in, get Vrabel in. Finally, you're in. What was the experience like for you yesterday, Mike?
Well, it was amazing. Just to come up and the reception that we received, my family received, that I received from first of all, the fans that were here in the rain. And again, I know that I wish that we could have had the fans, but we didn't. I think it was an intimate reception. Just a lot of emotion. I don't think I've given myself a chance to just to go back and reflect on that, on the 8 years here and the success and the teammates. And I think that was probably the coolest thing, was to see them and see Dante and be able to, just catch up and, just see how excited everybody is for you.
Can we go back to the start of that 8 years and, sort of run us through your free agent visit here? We've heard a lot of stories about how it's not overly glamorous when
Rodney
you come
uses
in.
the ground round line, that they wined and dined him at the ground round. I don't know if you were a
Well,
ground round
I was
guy.
with Anthony Pleasant, and so we probably got a little nicer experience. I think we actually went to the Capitol Grill in Chestnut Hill. And
Excuse us.
yeah, so because I think Bill had history with Anthony Pleasant, so he was probably like, well, let me take Anthony for a nice meal. And but it was just, visit at the stadium, old Foxborough Stadium. And again, these aren't recruiting trips. These are trips to make sure that, this is the player that we want to target, and the player can ask questions and get information and then make a decision. And so didn't have a whole lot of options, and this one was certainly, the best one for me.
You said yesterday during your speech that it was important for you to start. In 4 years you did a lot, but you wanted to start. Did you get a sense maybe on that visit or early on, Mike, that these guys had a good idea of how to use you?
Well, I can remember having a conversation with Bill and him saying, hey, really all we need is what you did in that preseason game last year against Miami. And I'm thinking, I don't even remember playing Miami in the preseason. But Bill had gone back and he had watched, and there were clips that he must have seen that there was a vision for, probably an extended play time at that point in time in the preseason or whenever it was. And so then I started thinking, okay, well, at least they have an idea of how they want to use me or what I may be able to do there. Bill had talked about the opportunity, not guaranteeing anything, but saying that there would be a spot available pretty much at outside linebacker where they would have some other players to compete with, and then see where things were.
When you look at the way your years unfolded, it's almost like it was a perfect system for you. I mean, did you catch that right away? Like, they really want to use me exactly to,
I
suit
don't
my
think
skill
I
set?
wasn't being misused in Pittsburgh. I had just transitioned from a couple different positions, was rotating in and was getting some playing time 3 and 4 years in, special teams, some third down packages, whatever that may be. But this was a new opportunity. Some carryover from Pittsburgh, some different. And then as things progressed and it was, learn this position, actually, I think I played 2 seasons inside linebacker or a season and a half at some point in time, and find myself at different spots.
I've heard this from many ex-players, guys who you played with and everything like that. Were you able to get away with more as far as like maybe busting Bill's balls?
Well, I don't know. I think the timing was always
overrated,
critical.
or-
No, I don't think it's overrated. I think that there is, like I said yesterday, I think I said things that everybody wanted to say. And I probably was just dumb enough to say them. I sometimes say the quiet part out loud sometimes, unfortunately. But it's all timing. And sometimes, it's a turd in a punch bowl and doesn't always work, but sometimes it works out pretty good. But that takes a little bit of time, and it takes, again, you have to be willing to take it if you want to give it. And I think that Bill always was very conscious of that, whether that's players to Bill or Bill to us. He knew that, we had to sit there and take it when we got the low lights, and, we'd be on the balustrader, and it would be like, what we can't do. And so it was a good situation. We had a bunch of really good teammates that all kind of rallied behind that.
Do you think you were able to back it up with your play though, Mike? I don't know if that's a 53rd or 54th guy that was trying to crack wise. It might be different. Well, you were a core guy on all three phases of the game.
Yeah, but I think that's what makes a locker room, is just different personalities. Again, you have to perform on the field, and then whatever your personality is, I think there was no restrictions on, hey, we just want a bunch of robots. I think that was the impression that everybody had, and we certainly weren't that.
Well, the best thing about Mike, and I told you this a million times, Mike didn't care who he was busting on. Professional. I used to call you a professional ball buster.
Okay.
That's what you were. I'd come in with like a TV shirt on one day, and he'd go, look at this fraud. He's got TV tonight. It didn't matter. He treated all of us the same, and I think that's probably permeated the locker room and garnered respect in that way.
Well, again, I think the fact that if you have a relationship with somebody, I think that's when you kind of go back and forth with them. It's like having a nickname. If you don't have a nickname, there's no such thing as a bad nickname. Just be appreciative that you have a nickname. That means that they know who you are, and that you're kind of a part of the group. And if you don't have a nickname, you better try to figure out why. And so it was, whether it was a relationship with the media, it was a two-way street, assistant coaches and certainly teammates.
Much has been made. You played in a different era, believe it or not, where, and as during your career, the league was starting to legislate against defenses, hard hitting and everything like that. When you look back at the Warner play, Ty's interception, I thought it was very generous of Ty to give you credit yesterday too. Are you going to get flagged for that if that play happens today, do you think?
I don't know. I think that what we've talked about is matching the hand, and they've changed here in the last year or two about what's forcible. I don't know. You know what I mean? I should have gotten there sooner, to be honest with you. They didn't block me. It was just a lucky play, and Ty did all the work. But whether it's, as long as it's not forcible, we've talked about matching the hand, and same thing that they teach here, and where everybody else is trying to teach, and didn't hit the football. I'm glad that I didn't, so that Ty was able to catch it and score.
Can we ask you a little bit about tight end too, and
Sure.
just sort of how that transition? How did it come about? Whose idea?
Well, I think Drew put it best yesterday. I had a bunch of energy, and I'd show up 3 hours before the game and go out on the field, and Drew would be out warming up, and I would start running routes, and he'd say, well, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, 4, 5, run this, different routes, and I'd run them on the right, and we'd flip around and run them on the left, and then I'd go inside and wait for the game. And he must have had a conversation, or Charlie was outside and said, hey, this guy could probably do this. And we had it in. We used it finally in the Chargers game in San Diego, scored. We lost the game, so it did not get much attention. And then kind of snowballed from there. Whether we had 2 tight ends active or 3, sometimes that third tight end was never very happy when we got down to the goal line. And, so those tight ends probably hated the fact that I would go in there at times.
Drew never got a chance to do that on the field. Tom came in. Mike, was there a time that you can think of, we remember, like you guys, the defense carried that team in 01 for sure, no doubt about it, no disgrace. But do you remember a time you said, you know what, this kid might have something? Not, obviously, nobody saw where he was going to wind up. But do you remember a time where you said, you know what, this kid might have something?
I don't, specifically. It's just hard for me to to think back. You know, the 2-minute drive in the Super Bowl, and I just it's just hard for me. I just remember his leadership, his competitiveness. That's what I enjoyed at practice, in the building, his work ethic. You know, I would always see it. I mean, this guy was, you know, he was powerlifting in the weight room. It wasn't, you know, the pliability that we saw later on. I mean, this guy was in there working and trying to train and get stronger, and he knew that he needed to develop and he needed to be a stronger player. That's what I recognized. I said, man, this guy's in here squatting and power cleaning, and you know, he's training differently than I think most quarterbacks in the NFL would be at that time.
When you had that streak, the winning 3 out of 4, I mean, obviously winning back-to-back hasn't been done since. You know, do you look back at that and appreciate just how special it was, and what does it mean to you to be part of those teams?
Well, I think that I don't look back enough. I don't, but we expected to win. You know, I mean, we did. We had a feeling about us that when each week it was like, okay, what's the game plan going to be, and how are we going to win? And we expected to win, and that is you know, that's a powerful mindset to be in. Now, we didn't win every game, but you know, rarely did we. You know, were we out of a game, or did we think that we weren't going to be able to compete in each game?
Really quick, when you...
And now, great moments in history.
And yet I was still nice enough to invite you along.
Yes, it was very nice.
Yes,
you
it
were
was
the
very
third
nice.
wheel? You got our table.
No, there were
for
like
us?
6 of us.
I mean, the place was
I was
packed.
going to say, Fred was the you-know-what block.
Why are you mad at me?
Why? He says with the big grin across his face.
Why are you so upset
You
about
know what you
all
did.
of this?
I'm upset at you.
Why?
Yeah, just you.
All of our lives are open book. Why is it yours?
Yeah, why are you special?
Oh, you purposely do these things.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do. He
I
admits
purposely
it.
talk. We all talk about things going on.
You make things out of thin air that are not there.
What's thin air? You were with a lady friend. What's thin air about that?
No, a lady friend implies that there's something going on.
And
She rode a
That's
bike.
the end of it.
Dude, look like a lady.
but it doesn't have to be.
It is, because I told you yesterday, and I don't like it when you make me repeat myself.
Sounds like my father.
Exactly.
You think I'm screwing things up for you? Just tell me.
You've been screwing things up for me for 12 years, buddy.
Did you specifically tell him not to mention it?
No, I knew he was going. As soon as he walked up and saw us, he had that stupid grin that he's got on his face right now.
I can so see it, too.
I won't mention it again, but when something happens, could you let us know?
Nothing
do you mean?
is going to happen.
You know, like if they hook, you know, if they decide to.
Nothing is going to happen. You effing morons. I'm going to go with Andy.
Wait, why are you yelling at me? I didn't do anything. It's him.
Because you're joking around too. You
I
know
egged
it.
him on a little.
Yes, you do.
I admit it, but this is all Fred.
I don't. Okay.
What'd you guys eat? Did I miss that part?
I had swordfish.
That's another great moment from
All right, back here on Patriots Unfiltered. 855-PATS-500 is the TPX hotline. Podcast at patriots.com
I
is
missed
the
that.
email
Can
address.
You call Eric just to get under his skin for a second?
I'm afraid. He's been too quiet. Like, I haven't heard hide or hair of him.
No, me neither.
Some of
I'm
those
a little
moments,
worried.
Just
Yeah.
classic.
I'm a little worried.
Check on
But before the break, I teased, I have a rule change
Okay.
that I've been thinking about.
And I've been waiting with bated breath.
And it has to do with the communications in the helmet. And my rule change is keep it on all game, all players.
No.
Like, why not?
No.
Why not have your coach be able to talk to the quarterback throughout the game? Like, why not? What's the downside of that?
So you don't
Like
think
NASCAR, you're always talking to your pit crew.
but you don't think that like you just like deuce is wide open. Just throw the deuce.
Yeah.
Right on the sideline.
Yeah, why not?
Because then are you playing or
Well, you played quarterback, Paul. Would that be
watching?
distracting for you as you're
Distracting, or would that help you?
Well,
you're
no,
driving
you
back
work
to
out that,
pass
like
and
some
you're-
quarterbacks might like it. Other quarterbacks might say, don't
Yeah.
do that. But I think
think
to
that's-
have communication available throughout the game, what's the downside of that?
I like it as an XFL thing, like one of the experimental leagues to try it. But it would be interesting. You get like a shorthand with somebody where you have code words, so you just get one thing in. You don't want to
Right.
overwhelm them, but
So,
I'd
Evan,
like to see,
as a
I'd
ball
like to see
knower, what do
less
you
of
think
that
about that?
than more.
I don't know.
I would say it would be a really huge advantage for certain coaches that are better than others.
Okay.
And so like you have Sean McVay in the quarterback's ear at all times, that's going to be a gigantic advantage. And if I was a coach, I would then put my butt up in the booth so I could see the overhead, and then you can literally call out open receivers
you know what?
like on the
Hire
field.
better coaches then. You know, make it a difference.
Well, I just think that that's
can't
the
the players
idea,
decide
right?
the game?
Right.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, it
They
takes a
still
little
have
off
to
the
execute.
competition.
Yeah,
Now it's just the smartest guy wins because
Right.
he sees it before
Well,
someone
like
else.
in every other
Boring.
sport, pretty much, there's open communication during the game. Like in NBA, you don't need headphones because obviously you don't have helmets, but the coaches on the sideline barking out things to players throughout the game.
And the coaches
During
on the
the
sideline
action.
of the NFL game they're barking out
No,
things
but you
too.
can't hear them when
Yeah,
in
but
football.
so you're telling me if you're down this end in the NBA game and the ball's down that end, they
Yes.
can? No, they can't.
Yes, they can.
No,
they run to the edge of the table. They can
They're
hear.
screaming and they can't get hurt. They're not hurt either.
But all I'm saying is, why not? What's the downside of that? Like
I
Evan
just
said,
don't want it. I don't want a league decided by the
The chess masters who are just telling
the coach,
yeah.
like orchestrating all of the not the nerds, just like because I don't
the
think it really
nerds.
takes a nerd to see that guy's open. I would not call myself a nerd, and I do that in the press box every week. He's wide open. Just throw it to him.
This is not
Like-
target practice, Paul. There's,
Right.
there's progressions. Okay?
I don't know. I still think that I think it would elevate the play. I think it would make it better play on the field. Maybe less mistakes. I don't know. You still have to execute it.
I like competition, but that's me.
I think this.
I like guys competing against one another.
I think this still.
Who's better?
I think this is still in the spirit of competition.
Now, did you mean Fred, just the quarterback, or like everybody?
No, everybody.
Everyone's
There's
got
11
a-
guys on
right.
both sides of the ball.
They all have a thing.
It's
Right.
mass hysteria. Is he talking to me? Is he talking to Evan? I don't know. Who's
Right.
the guy?
Well, he's yelling like
I feel like that would be distracting.
Right.
But,
well,
I think every team should have the ability to do it the way they want to do it. If they want to, in everybody's helmet, they can. If it's just a couple people on either side of the ball, they can do it. But just let them do it the way
I
they
mean,
want.
would you like clam up if you were a wide receiver and you're like lined up and they're like hike and you go and you hear the coach going, Perillo's wide open, and like would that throw you off? I don't, like that's.
But you get used to
quick
it.
adjustment.
I feel like it would confuse me.
That's one of those things, though. If that's the way it's done, you get used to it.
I'm open.
I don't know. I
don't feel
just
open.
thought, like,
I want less of that.
why not?
I
Because
want more like the
Organic
players
play, yeah.
deciding. That's why I'm not a huge. I'm very much in the minority, but I'm not a huge fan of like the drastic weather games.
I was just
I'm
going to
with
say
you
that
so
along
much
those
on
lines.
that.
As we're talking to rule changes, like, would you ever consider playoff games being moved to neutral sites where where weather is no longer a factor?
No, I do like the fact that they're home fields and all
right.
that. I don't love it when the weather is a factor in the game.
Yeah.
I'm with you on this one.
But
I
but I do think that you win more games and you get the right. Now, what I would tweak is forget the divisions. Like if there's going to be 7 teams, the 7 best records should get seeded 1 to 7.
So basically, do we need even conferences? Do we just have a 32-team league, and every year
16-team
the
playoff?
schedule is a big surprise, and then at the end of the year it's just seeding?
Yeah.
Well,
I like rivalries, though. I mean, I think there's something good about playing certain teams twice a year and always having home and homes, knowing you can count on that.
But the hockey format in the NHL is disaster.
That's a terrible format.
And it's all messed up. The NBA does it Paul's way, where it's just 1 through 8. Now,
And that's the way
now
it
they
should
have
be
to
done.
play in, but it's
And the NHL used to do it that way.
Yeah.
They changed it like whatever.
Yeah,
I don't
to
know,
try
8
to
or-
do
8
the
or 10 years
rivalry
ago.
thing
That's
to
terrible.
divisions and stuff.
I don't know. I know I'm in the minority, so I fully admit that I think of it differently. I'm not a huge division rivalry guy. Like to me, the Patriots in the Brady era, in my view, their rivals were Pittsburgh, Indy, later Denver, and Baltimore.
Yeah.
It was never the 3 divisional teams.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's
That you have to play twice a year, every year. Like, I think back to, Green Bay, Dallas games with Brett Favre and Troy Aikman. San Francisco, Dallas in the Steve Young
heyday
era,
of the NFC.
Yeah.
I don't think of remember that Bears-Packers game? Well, you might not know which one I'm talking about because they played 200 times. Like, I don't care.
But you have to look at the origins of the divisions in the conference. A lot of it was geographic based. It costs more money and time to get from places, so they tried
It's a great point.
They don't need to do that anymore.
Right. Just, if you want to have the 2 conferences, so you still have like a Super Bowl with the 2 different conferences, fine.
Yeah.
1 to 16,
Yeah.
And that's how you play the conference.
When Kurt Warner was talking about it though, what are these teams supposed to do? You know, like you can't pick that you're a dome team or you're a Southern team. And I mean, I guess you're just win, find a way to win, or you're gonna just have to suck it up. It's
Kurt Warner's the one that brought
but
this up.
but what are they supposed to do? Like, how are they supposed to prepare for that? It just feels like an innate disadvantage that the warm weather teams are on if they're gonna have to go play in a snowstorm. And I know like that kind of weather can be a great leveler for both teams, but still, you're practicing in it every day. You're a little bit more used to it, and it's just I don't know.
Well, you're not really practicing in it every day.
But I'm with you. I mean, I said that on Sunday watching the Eagles Rams game, and I got attacked like, oh well, why don't you like weather games? And I want to see the best team win straight up.
I want to see the players play to the best of their abilities.
Right. Like,
I don't want to see a guy fall down because he came out of his cut too fast in the
So
snow.
you don't think a team that can adapt to different elements makes them a better team?
No.
No?
I think it's a team that adapted to the elements better.
Why?
That's all.
Because they had the ability to do that.
No.
They could adapt.
No.
If you're a team that can't adapt, doesn't that knock you down a notch?
I don't think it's always the team, like the home team doesn't always adapt to the elements better. So like if it was just about that, then the home team would always win.
Right.
Like Buffalo, when they played Cincinnati a couple years ago, Cincinnati adjusted better to the elements than Buffalo did.
Right.
So that's not because they were better. It's because they adapted to the elements better that day.
But
and
why
some of the things
were they able to adapt?
Because maybe they don't do things in the same manner that the other team does, and the weather caused Puka Nacua to drop a couple of passes that I've never seen him drop before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's not because they adapted or are better or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like when the weather impacts the way the game is played.
Yeah.
I don't care necessarily like
So
the
you
better
like
team.
the win game in Buffalo?
No, that was terrible.
I know, I'm only
That was
kidding.
one of the worst games ever to watch.
I'm only kidding.
you just want to see, from my perspective, it's always obviously about the strategy and the X's and O's, and it's like, well, that everything goes out the door if it's a blizzard, right? Like you're not running your regular offense if you have snow everywhere and you can't execute that regular offense. And to Paul's point, I just thought watching that Philly LA game, I thought the Rams had a really good chance to win that game. But then the snow came, and they just were making uncharacteristic errors because of the weather, And I think a big part of it too is like footing and understanding how to run in snow.
I even think it affected
cleats.
Philadelphia too. And this is where, like, yes, I wanted full disclosure. I wanted the Rams to win because I like the Rams. I like Sean McVay and I like Matthew Stafford. I don't really make any secret of that. But I would say that I don't think the Eagles played to their capabilities because of the weather. Also, they couldn't really throw the ball. AJ Brown looked lost.
Yeah.
Like he couldn't. Like he dropped a pass at the goal. I've never seen him drop that pass. The one he dropped at the pylon. So this is not because my team lost. I don't like the weather. I don't think the Eagles played very well in the weather either.
Well, what if we tied it all together and you had realignment and you have all warm weather teams and all cold weather teams, and that way you're all kind of used to it.
Mass hysteria, mind blown.
Well, think about Miami though. I mean, that's and we think of it goes both ways. You're always looking for that Miami game. Are we going down there in September? Are they coming up here in December? For them, what are they supposed to do every year?
And at least I would say with that, like a dome team that plays a team from the Northeast, like I don't think that's a disadvantage for the team in the Northeast. Do you know what I mean? And it's not necessarily geographic based. Some teams are just,
well, Minnesota's
not as good as the other team, and the weather equalizes the playing field.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like when that happens. I don't care necessarily who wins 90% of the time, because most of the time these games are played between teams that we don't really care about. Let's be honest.
Yeah. But like the win game's such a perfect example. Like the Patriots basically got blown out the other two games against Buffalo that season, but they won the game in the win because it was wonky.
Right, and that's fine. Like that's the team that I worked for, and they won the games. And same thing in the early 2000s with the playoff games. When they went to Indianapolis, they were like 38-34 games. They play here, and it's like 17-3, 20-3. Like it's a whole different game that got played. Now the Patriots, I think, were better than the Colts. So it's not. I'm not saying the better team doesn't win. I want to see the game played the way it was played in Indy when the Patriots won. 38-34.
Yeah.
Inside. You know what I mean? Like I think that's showing the teams playing to the best of their abilities.
And they adapted.
Yeah.
You're
right, Fred. You're right about the adapting thing. Yeah. But the Patriots were better.
I know.
Yeah. But if they had lost a game because of the weather, and you felt like they were the better team, you'd be upset. This is where I'm trying to be consistent.
Yeah.
The Patriots showed you they could beat you in an indoor, outdoor. The only thing that Brady couldn't win in for some unknown reason was intense heat.
I would like to know, like, how many times the favored team in a bad weather game lost the game? I would like to know that record.
Yeah.
But to me, it's less about the outcome of the game as it is the way the game is
Well,
played.
yeah, it's not as fun
It's
to
not.
watch.
To me, it's not
aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
It's just I like to see the teams play to their capabilities. I don't care if the outcome is exactly the same.
Right.
Like if Philadelphia beats the Rams by 6 and the snow never happened, that's fine. I just think that both teams played better.
You want the outcome to be solely based on ability.
Yeah. Yeah, now coaching's part of ability. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong.
Right.
Schemes and whatnot. This team had a better game plan. They executed their game plan better and they won the game. Not because, they couldn't use half of their game plan because the weather wasn't conducive to being able to, in the wind game, have Josh Allen throw the ball 40 times.
Right.
Like he did in the other 2 games when they blew us out.
Yeah.
Makes me realize we should probably check the weather before we do picks today.
Oh, yeah.
Kansas City and Philadelphia.
Yep. Last show I mentioned about, you mentioned the picks that I'm rooting when it comes to the Bills in Kansas City for Kansas City to win.
Yeah.
Because I can't have the Bills winning a Super Bowl.
Oh, I can't even fathom this.
You can't even.
I can't have the Bills. So if they're out, then they can't win the Super Bowl.
This is definitely
Now, I
dogs
don't
and
want
cats.
Kansas City to win 3 in a row either. But of those 2, Sophie's choices, I would take the
So if one of them has to win the Super Bowl,
It would be
you'd rather
Kansas
it be
City.
Kansas City
Yeah.
than Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's an
Not
interesting
me.
take.
Yeah. And Avery says, I'm a fraud.
Yes,
says,
you
I'm a
are.
fraud Patriots fan. If you root for Kansas City, get out.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I'm rooting for Buffalo, but I still feel kind of icky about it, But
I can't. I have nobody to root for. Like this is I can't. In my heart of hearts, I cannot root for Buffalo. I like Josh Allen.
Well,
Everybody
obviously
knows
now
that.
I'm rooting for the Commanders. They're my last hope.
I can't. That also has.
I just don't like the Commanders. Now, it's hard to root against this team. I'll say that. What Jaden Daniels is doing, pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it'd be good for the league. I think if Buffalo won, somebody.
See, when you say things like that, then that's when they jump on you. See, it's fixed.
Chad says, question for Paul. Does that mean, in your weather stance, that no one should play in Denver because of the altitude? It's impossible to eliminate that as a
I
variable.
mean, that's a good point.
They
That's
put it on the helmet.
That's
the exact footage.
That's a good comeback. I would say that the weather isn't necessarily the same. I think Mike brought up Miami. That's a little different to me.
Yeah.
I mean, but I understand what he's saying. It's not it's not completely
right.
Out of left field.
Sure.
I mean,
No,
the altitude that's part of home field advantage.
But maybe you can kind
and
of
I'm not
eliminate
the advantage is not the part that I'm necessarily having a problem with. Does it cause you not to be able to do the things that you do every other week?
Yeah.
I don't think teams go to Denver and they normally throw the ball 35 times. And they go to Denver and because of the altitude, they can't throw it 35 times.
No, they should be able to throw it farther.
That's what intense wind does. And intense snow, stuff like that. It causes you not to be able to have a game plan that you have every other game.
Sam from St. Catherine says, how does any Patriots fan not like weather games? The dynasty doesn't happen without them.
No, that's fair. And I mean, when it's your team and they're having the dome teams coming here, you love it. But I just say, as an overall football fan, I would echo what Paul says. I want it to be level playing ground, and it's not going to take it out of what it should be, which is like your thing, like the schemes and what they run and what they do best, and let these two teams play at their best and be in. It's never going to be ideal conditions, but
I also just watch games that aren't the Patriots so much differently than I watch the Patriots.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get at.
And
when I don't care who wins.
Right. We were talking the other day about Lamar, and people they don't allow you to criticize Lamar. Well, I just don't care. I'm not rooting for the Ravens. They're not the team that I care if they win or lose. I just think he's a great football player. I think he's great to watch, so I enjoy watching him. If you want to get hot and bothered about that he doesn't win in the playoffs, then that's fine. But it's the same thing with the weather games. I just want to watch good football. I don't think football in a blizzard is good football. I don't think it's played well.
I would argue that if Adam Vinatieri missed that field goal against the Raiders, you would not look at this the same way. That's why I'm separating. My take is not about the team that I'm rooting for, because obviously the email is absolutely right. one of the most iconic games in the history of the franchise. It's because you won it. Mm-hmm. And then you went on to win the Super Bowl, and it kicked off a dynasty. Mm-hmm. I can't separate that. That's like the greatest memory of the time that I've worked here was the first Super Bowl when we went down to New Orleans.
But you can make the argument in that particular game, had it not been for the weather, you probably would have got blown out.
Yeah,
right. No,
well, that's, I mean, it wasn't.
I'm not willing to say that.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to say that. I think that the Raiders had to play the week before. Who's to say? They might have come out and the Patriots may have blown them out if they had the ability. They threw the ball 54 times that night.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just
like, maybe if the weather wasn't bad, they would have scored a lot more points and not been in trouble like that.
It's a cool game, but it's ridiculous. Like, it was ridiculous what they were playing that day. I mean, it was.
So I'm with Evan. It's more about when I watch a game and I don't care who wins. I'd like to see the teams play and play to their ability and not have anything. You know, it's almost like you're playing left-handed.
Purely for entertainment purposes when the Patriots are not playing in the game. So I'd like to be entertained.
Emotionally, like when you're watching, like when you go down to Miami, you wouldn't rather have it be 75 degrees than 95 degrees? Yeah. So you can play a little bit closer to your capabilities? Of course you would.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons, too, why I thought the college football playoff was pretty cool. Because, I mean, not really weather-related, but just going to those old stadiums, playing the old bowl games, you know.
I wouldn't be surprised if they add another round of home field for next year's.
855 Pat's 500 is the TPX hotline. We got a couple people have been holding on. Brandon is in Indiana. What's up, Brandon?
Hey, guys. First time caller here, so I want to thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks for holding on.
Quick
Thank
questions for you.
Yep.
What receiver this offseason, whether it's in the draft or free agency, do you guys think is the best fit for the Patriots and this McDaniels offense?
Ooh, for in particular the McDaniels offense.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Evan for that. No, I'm being serious.
No,
you're probably looking at a guy's skill set for McDaniels offense in a different way than me. I'm just going to go talent and say T. Higgins, but I'm not telling you.
Take your pick. I mean,
I don't think it necessarily. I'm kind of with you, Paul. Like, I don't think it necessarily sways me one way or the other, where I would prioritize this player over that player. And in fact, just learning from their mistakes. Like, I feel like that's how they got into this mess at wide receiver to an extent, was searching for a certain type of receiver versus just taking the best overall player at that position. I think that's why you ended up with Jalen Polk over Ladd McConkey, is because you were looking for a certain type of receiver. I mean, if I had to pick one, the guy that I look at and I say, that's a really good fit in this offense, Matthew Golden from Texas would probably be my pick. Reminds me a lot of like Deion Branch or Troy Brown, like that type of receiver. But I
like him.
I don't think it's necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm taking Matthew Golden over Tet McMillan just because he fits the system better.
If you could trade for any receiver, realistic trade,
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown.
Yeah, I think you could make anything out of it.
I'm nudging him to the realistic category for the sake of this argument.
Will it to be?
Yeah, like AJ Brown, I think is you can't go wrong with AJ Brown. Like he's going to fit any system.
Did we mention that sort of report about the Tyreek Hill thing? Jeremy Fowler, according to an NFC, expects the Patriots
Brandon.
If they can't get a receiver in free agency, they can't get T. Higgins. They'd be interested in making a trade for Tyreek Hill. I am not overly interested in that.
Yeah, I'm not either, but
although the price would be right.
I mean, he did quit on the field.
Right.
It's like,
do I really want that? And maybe he comes here and he's a perfect citizen.
There was mic'd up, and it was Jalen Waddle who was like, Cheetah, you out? And it was just him on the field during the game being like, yeah, I'm out. I mean, literally having a conversation on the field.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't know.
Wow, look at that. Something relevant and a mic'd up.
Cheetah.
Yeah, I love Tyreek Hill. I think he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. I don't, for a team that's trying to rebuild culture and rebuild the locker room and rebuild attitude. That's kind of why I'm out on him. All these receivers come with a little bit of that baggage at times, but you just want it to be constructive. You want it to be pointed in the right direction.
Yep. Let's see. Kale is in Iowa. Hey, Kale.
Hi, guys. I wanted to say thanks for all you guys do and all the hard work and time you put in, especially over your lunch breaks, which I know Hardy will never understand.
No. They'd rather take 6 breaks per hour.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, at least 6 breaks.
Yeah.
My question today, and I hope it doesn't get anybody in trouble, is about ownership and their decision-making process when it comes to hiring coaches. I feel like over the time the Crafts have owned the team, they have made some snap decisions when it came to hiring coaches that have really panned out. And I think that without Tom Brady, Bill Belichick would have been another one of those coaches, which I know is a big ask, but I feel like drafting him in the 6th round wasn't like they identified that talent. So I just didn't know what you guys felt like if Mike Vrabel doesn't pan out. Should the Crafts look at a different way to hire coaches or somebody else to be in that process?
Well, listen, I can understand. I mean, certainly with Mayo, it was a colossal mistake.
Yep.
You know, I'm not going to be a fraud at the time. I was hoping it could work out, but it was based on faith. It wasn't based on a track record or anything else. It was just based on faith and faith in Robert Kraft's instincts. You know, because that's all it was.
Yeah.
That's all it was based on, and that is not a way to hire a head coach.
Yeah.
And he admitted that afterwards.
But I would just push back a little bit and say, like, I don't think Bill Belichick was a snap decision. I think that was a decision 4 years in the making.
Yeah, I think what Kale might be saying is, had Tom Brady not come along and they continued to kind of flounder, would they have given up on him early?
Oh, I think they might. I think he might have been in trouble.
Is that what you're saying, Kale?
Yeah, and also with Bill Belichick, you can look at when he was talking, I believe Herm Edwards, he made a comment about how he thought he was on the chopping block.
No, I know he was in trouble. I mean, that's a fact.
Because you traded a first-round pick. So not only did you make that decision, and maybe it was 4 years in the making, but if that had been a failure, not only did you make that decision based on instinct, but you traded something very valuable for the franchise.
Yeah,
no, I know,
but Kale, but here's the thing.
I'm having a hard time getting a guy in trouble for making that move.
Yeah.
Like, you got the greatest coach who's ever done it.
I know, but Kale, here's the thing, and I get what you're saying. Like, maybe they limited the pool of people they talked to, even in the Belichick case. But if you look around the league, most of these teams, when it comes to the head coach, know who they're going to get. I mean, you look at the Bears. The minute that the Lions were out of contention, they hired Ben Johnson.
Yeah, Aaron Glenn
you know,
of the Jets.
it's not like they did this extensive They could have talked to 1 million people before the Bears, but they knew they wanted Ben Johnson, and that's why they waited. And most teams are like that. A lot of this is nonsense. You know,
for the sake of this argument, you probably don't want to compare yourself to the Bears.
No, but I'm just saying, most teams identify the head coach that they want pretty early on.
Yeah.
Pretty early on.
I agree with that. I would push back a little bit with the Belichick thing, where if you look at it in a vacuum, it looks the way it does, but when stacked up with all the other ones, I'm not saying I more think maybe they should look at a different way. I'm not saying they have to interview 1,000 candidates or 20, but maybe the things that they're looking for, they should adjust.
Yep. I mean, you could make the case that maybe, you know, they take people who they're comfortable with, people who they're knowledgeable about. Maybe,
the world?
But
Isn't that how
it's not like we've had a lot of
know any other way to do it.
It's not like we've had a lot of head coaches since Kraft bought the team. You know, you had
Carroll?
Parcells, who he inherited. He hired Carroll, went to Belichick, who lasts for 20 years, and then you had Mayo and now Vrabel. Yeah. You know, so.
I would say that, you know, you definitely understand the criticism of how they went about the Mayo situation, and I think you could understand that people thought this was sort of a setup with Vrabel. I would kind of compare this a little bit more to Belichick in that I think they kind of really thought long and hard about Vrabel last year and felt like they couldn't do it because they had already done that contractual thing with Mayo and didn't want to go back on it. But I think that they thought long and hard about Vrabel last year.
Yeah, I think
because
so
I don't
too.
think they expected him to be available.
Yeah,
I wonder about the Jets process because they interviewed everybody under the sun, but then they ultimately went back to a player who had played under them.
The
and
Jets,
the
but
guy
remember,
they wanted.
but
and
remember,
the exact
the Jets,
head coach they've hired for 20 years.
But it's the guy that wanted them too. Yeah. Like that's the big difference to me.
And don't forget that they hired this outside firm led by Mike Tannenbaum, to do the search.
Like I said, I just don't know how
So
many
he's-
different ways there are to do
He's
it.
got to
Right,
earn his
right,
money.
right.
He's got to earn his money.
Well, that's what
you know.
it's like that, and that's a good comparison because would it make people like Kale feel better if they had hired a search firm, gone through all this, and then ultimately just ended up with Vrabel? But hey, we interviewed 26 guys.
Right.
Does that make you feel better?
We're
Does
billing by the hour, by the way.
Or do you think that they probably were going to end up with Aaron Glenn probably no matter who they interviewed?
I just think in this process too, the Patriots were the number one destination. I think they had the best opening available on the market. So in my mind,
I agree with
they interviewed the two best candidates, Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson, and they had to pick of the litter. So why they don't have to go all the way down to Liam Cohn and Joe Brady?
That's a
and
good point.
Like why would they waste? Why would anybody waste each other's time in that situation?
Right.
So you could definitely make the case that maybe they should have looked harder at Ben Johnson. But Ben Johnson took the Bears job sight unseen. They didn't even meet in person. They did the virtual thing, and they just gave him the job off of the virtual interview. So it would have been quick anyways if it was Ben Johnson after the Lions were eliminated, and I think the Lions were eliminated a lot sooner than people expected, which also impacted that. But at the end of the day, they had the best job. They knew it. They had two prime candidates. They interviewed both guys, and they went with the guy that they were a little bit more comfortable with and more familiar with. But I can't fault them for not having this whole exhaustive, extensive search because thankfully, they're not the Raiders. They're not the Jaguars, who nobody wants to coach the Jaguars. Like, they can't get Liam Cohn to take the job. Like, they want to give him the job.
Well, but something happened there because after he pulled out, then they fired Balky.
Yeah, because he probably said
My
fire
guess
Balky.
is they're having a hard time getting people really interested because of
Right, and then the Raiders are.
So I wonder if
are
Cohn
dumpster
gets
fire.
back in the mix now.
He could.
I think. I think he. Well, not that it prohibits him. I think he signed an extension
Oh,
with
did he?
Tampa.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I would be. I think Robert Saleh might be in line there now.
Yeah.
But to Evan's point about the Jets, that is like there's like 4 or 5 first-time defensive-minded coaches, defensive-oriented coaches. It's Rex Ryan. It's Todd Bowles. It's Robert Saleh.
My whole life, they've had the same coach except Adam Gase for 2 years.
Adam Gase was the one outlier. He was an offensive-minded guy.
But Herm Edwards, Rex Ryan.
That's funny, isn't
Todd
it?
Bowles.
Why do you think that is?
They got a type. They all got a type,
Al
don't we?
Groh.
Al Groh for 1 year.
Yeah.
Barth and I did this on Catch 22 yesterday. We're like, the Jets just hired the same head coach over and over again. Like, you could argue that Aaron Glenn and Todd Bowles and Rex Ryan and like all these guys are the same guy.
First-time coaches, defensive coordinators.
Yeah.
Like that's
Cheaper,
That's
maybe?
what they hire. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Even Robert Saleh. Like, they're all the same.
Robert Saleh, Todd Bowles, Rex Ryan.
Yeah.
The list goes on.
Interesting. Patty's in Agawam. What's up, Patty?
What's up, everyone?
Hey.
Hey, Patty.
So, two-part Senior Bowl question. Evan, are you going by yourself? Are you taking Deuce with you? Because I know Alex isn't going. And what position group aside from like receiver and offensive lineman are you most interested to see down there? I'm interested to hear what you have to say about the tight ends because I think it's not a great class, but it's got a few good tight ends. And Fred, I went through at least just the NFC and AFC championship history. The only like real underdog that I saw that won in a cold weather game. I mean, there's the 2007 Giants, but they're a cold weather team that won in Green Bay, but was the 0-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were 4-point underdogs, and they had never, prior to winning that game in Philly, I don't think they had ever won a game where the temperatures were below freezing. And that's all I got. I'll take the answers off air.
And I appreciate the research because, as Patty knows, I'm too lazy to do it myself. But I think that Giants-Packers game would be an example of one.
No.
That game was not played as it would normally be played.
Very cold.
That hurt the better team, Green Bay.
It hurt Tom Coughlin's face.
Even though both of those teams are cold weather teams, you did not play that game like you would play a game in the middle of November.
Yeah.
Brandon Jacobs.
I just remember watching that game being like, oh, the Giants are going to win and they're going to beat us in the Super Bowl again. You just knew, you're like, I was rooting hard for the Packers. I was like, we can take the Packers. That's fine.
The tenor in the offices at Gillette Stadium with us, not football, was a lot different.
Really? Oh, you were excited because you beat them once and you felt like we got these guys? It's Eli Manning.
I just didn't think they were like a good team.
I thought we were cursed against the Giants. I knew it.
They played good.
T's in Virginia. Hey, T.
Higgins?
T.
Hello?
Yeah. Hey.
Hey. This is more of an off-season question, but
Nice.
Evan, it's more for you. You're close to my age. Sorry, guys, I meant to say hi to everybody first. But has anybody ever been able to convince their spouse, to give your child a Patriots-inspired name? My oldest child is 6, and he's a boy, and I was able to convince my wife to name him Julian. I knew she wasn't going to go for Tom or Brady.
No.
It's still early for you, Evan, though. You got some kids coming up.
I don't have any
No.
children.
You wouldn't. Well, probably be Kyle, right? Would be the name of your kid.
Maybe we'll name dogs after Patriots. No, I don't have anybody in my family that did that.
No.
And I don't plan on doing that.
I was named after my dad. He was named after his dad.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah, my son was
Thanks,
named
T.
after his 2 grandfathers also.
Zach in New Hampshire, on one of the more recent episodes, a caller asked Evan specifically to explain what an XZ slot, etc. means from an X and O standpoint, and it seemed that Mike was a bit offended that the caller singled out Evan because Mike could also explain that concept.
Sure could. He sure
Perhaps
could.
every time
Paul
Evan
couldn't.
explains things from an in-depth perspective, if you all didn't bust his balls for being a ball knower, callers might be more likely to look for everyone's input. We all have football opinions, but not all of us know ball, and we look to those that do in order to be more informed in our opinions.
Correct.
So
I know a
leave
little
Evan
bit.
alone.
I know a little bit.
I'm not one of them.
I knew Mike knew what he was talking about. I said go for it.
No, but it's that's one of the things I loved when I got into writing about football, was trying to learn, and I haven't dove into it at a level of Evan, who's getting playbooks and breaking it down, but there's a base level of knowledge that understanding what the positions are called, and generally, I'm more to the defensive side of the ball, but I talked to Evan
He's a
today.
defensive guy. I don't know if you know that.
No, we talked a little defense ball today because I was interested. I know the Patriots' traditional 3-4. It's usually 2 gappers up front, and I always wondered, do you mix and match that? Do you have this side of the ball is going to 2 gap, and then over here we're going to have a guy 1 gap and getting up the field. So we talk.
It's one of my all-time favorite memories in the locker room. So when I came here, I didn't really know a lot of those terms at all. Like I don't really
5 technique.
I don't use a lot of that stuff even
Wide
now.
9.
26 years later, whatever it is. But like 2 gapping and all that stuff, I had never heard that term in my life when I started working here. And then Pete Carroll had the old elephant position. Remember all that stuff, and you sort of learn those things. Belichick comes, 2 gap, Anthony Pleasant. He's a Bill guy. He's like one of those, got to circle the wagon guys, Anthony Pleasant. I'm talking to him about 2 gapping. And he gives me this look, and I just stopped in the middle, just me and him. And I go, did I get that really wrong? He goes, no, you're pretty good. Keep going. I go, that's about all I got. It was like, we had this just look in his eyes, like he could tell that I was faking it and that I didn't know what I was talking about. He could absolutely tell.
I would say for me, I understand more than I'm comfortable trying to express and explain to people, if that makes sense. Like I'm not really comfortable of rattling off things and like that. But I think I understand enough that I feel pretty comfortable.
I think people that cover the game for the most part understand enough. I don't think you have to have sort of a PhD, like Evan. I don't say that disrespectfully.
I appreciate that.
I say it honestly.
Yeah.
I think that's great if that's something that really interests you and you.
But
you
I think
learn
it's
the game.
changed now with the access to the All-22. That used to be forbidden.
Yeah, no, I
mean,
remember
you
pushback
you
on
could
not
never
wanting
get
it.
access to that. Now, writers and ball knowers are allowed to watch the All-22.
Even
right
the non-ball knowers
and I
can
think
get
that
to it,
helps.
too.
I think it helps.
And I think a
think
lot
it's
of
a
people
niche.
are interested in that, and that's great for those people. I'm more interested in reporting and analyzing what I'm seeing as opposed to breaking down. If I covered the White House, I wouldn't necessarily be overly interested in sort of all the processes that go on within Congress and filibustering and vetoing and all that. I want to report on what's going on.
Yeah.
I want to report on the results.
I think what
what it means.
I think the biggest reason why I steered towards the other stuff is because nowadays, especially, that side of it has become really, really difficult to break into because you have to have sources and you have to be connected and you have to have a network and all that kind of stuff, and it's difficult.
It's a great point
to build that. Whereas on the outside, when you're not here every single day, you can watch all 22 and you
can learn about the
and
game.
You can learn about the
and you can
game
know the
and you can
team.
do it that way. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's become more popular. But lately I've been getting down the rabbit hole of cadence. And like the importance of cadence, and I find it fascinating.
God help me.
And I won't give out any state secrets, but like obviously the Patriots with McDaniels will now have a whole. How do they get the offense started? Like, how do you actually get to the cadence?
90.
And it's fascinating to me. And like sometimes it's just first sound. Sometimes there's words. Sometimes it's we're going on the second sound. And there's all sorts of different things about the cadence. And like it's so important because it's all timing, right? It's like all timing up, like when you snap the ball, like everybody's got to be firing off the ball at the same time, otherwise the play doesn't work. And it's fascinating. It's
you
really
got to do
what was your cadence
okay,
in
here
high
we go.
school?
Oh, geez, the basic one. It's on 2.
Down, set.
The comparison I always make, though, is the weather. Some people will tell you what the barometric pressure is and all this, and other people just want to know if it's raining.
Nice
But some people
Fred's
find
a barometric
the weather
pressure guy.
interesting
It's
from a
why is it
scientific.
raining?
Why
is it raining?
Right.
So this is going to come as a big surprise, but I tend to like drama. I kind of create it.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of what more interests me. Like sort of when this particular year, and it's obviously it stunk for us because we went 4-13. But when you're hearing stuff out of the locker room, almost on a weekly basis, we just get some really good stuff out of the locker room. And I'm not telling you I want to lose to get that.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. But as a reporter, you sort of separate yourself from the wins and losses. Well, you should.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often enough. But you should separate yourself from the wins and losses. And now you're like, okay, well, if you're going to lose, I mean, obviously it's more fun to go to Super Bowls and cover Super Bowls and have that success.
Yeah, give me the drama.
Give me the drama.
Yeah, tell me what's going on and
That's
why is
the
it falling
story,
apart.
and that's the life beat. I think
Yeah.
a guy like Andrew Callahan, I thought did a good job of getting some of that drama
Yeah.
out of the locker room this year.
Yeah.
That you can't get
You have to.
necessarily
You have to
from.
do that.
Yeah,
That's why I like football, because there's so many different ways to approach it, to cover it, to talk about it. I mean, I love the game of hockey, but I couldn't ever analyze it. It's just like it's kind of a fluid game, and you're not going to sit there and break down plays and little moments. It's like it just kind of happens. It's
At
organic.
some point,
it's
Connor
not as
McDavid
fun
gets
to
the
talk.
puck, and he's better than the guys
Right,
that are trying to take it away
and
from
he
him.
skated through
scores.
everyone, and he scores. It's not. Evan can get into the schemes of it all. You can talk about all the different situations and clock management. And it's what makes it such a great sport.
But I feel like that's what makes us and like me and Barth, like Paul and you guys, like kind of see the big picture sometimes that I don't see because
Now
I'm
you know
so
why
in
the
weeds.
Kingmaker brought you in.
Yeah, because like that happens to me all
Right?
the time. It used to be Trags. Like Trags would be like, they just got beat, and I'd be like, no, like there's this 17 million X's and O's things that happen. He's like, nope, they were just better.
And you're probably right.
Right,
Like
right.
there are a million different things. That's what you always, like when you hear the coach, we just got to execute better. Well,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, right.
Really? You mean when you ran that play, you thought it was going to lose 3 yards? Well, of course you have to execute better.
Yeah. Plus, it's like 22 guys on the field, and it's like you can pick up something new every time you watch it.
Stop blaming the play callers.
All right. Little programming note. I have to leave early because I have a meeting at 2. So we'll get to the picks, and then you guys can continue. There's a lot of emails that came in
Free
if
for
you
all.
want to get to them.
Oh,
So
listen,
We're going to do the
that's-
picks now? It's
yeah,
early.
we have to. I have to get going
What time are you leaving?
pretty soon.
High level meetings. High level.
Pretty soon.
Very high level.
Gotta hurry. All right, Paul. What happened last week?
All right. So, what do I got here? Last week, Mike and Paul went 3-1. Evan and Fred went 1-3.
Yeah, not good. I wasn't good.
Alex got an incomplete. She did not show up. With the spread, Mike 3-0-1.
Wow.
Good job, Mike. Paul and Fred 1-2-1. And Evan 0-3-1.
I just started picking with my heart.
I
and
know
not
you
my
get
head in
cocky
the
now, and you're just
playoffs.
like, I guess.
So overall
good.
for the playoffs, Mike and Paul are 8-2. Let's see. Evan is 5-5. Fred is 4-6. With the spread, this is pretty impressive. Michael 7-2-1.
Yeah.
Nice.
Playoff money.
Followed by Paul at 5-4-1. Then Fred at 3-6-1, and Evan 2-7-1.
That's okay.
Okay.
And we
Doesn't
all hit on the national championship.
Right.
We all had our.
Did I have a lock this week?
I'm getting to
Oh,
that.
okay.
I'm getting to that.
Sorry.
It's got a
jumped the
meaning.
gun.
The folks, this is your lock of the week pick. Was a push.
A push.
It was a push. Fred had the Rams getting 6. They lost by 6.
Very nice.
Interesting.
So
all right.
that catches us up.
So let's get to Sunday's games. 2 games left before the Super Bowl. 3 o'clock on Sunday, Fox and Fox Deportes. It's the 12-5 Commanders visiting the 14-3 Eagles.
The Eagles by 6.
6. Yeah, I mean, Washington's a great story, and I just was really impressed with Jaden Daniels and just the way he throws the ball. It's pretty to watch. Smooth athlete, can run. But I think they run out of gas this week. I don't trust Jalen Hurts entirely, though. I'm going to take Philly to win, but I'm going to take Washington to cover. I think it's a close game. I think Jaden Daniels continues to play well, execute under pressure. But I think Philly's got a little bit too much, especially on the defensive side of the ball. My only wild card is Jalen Hurts and his performance throwing the ball through the air.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like I can't pick the Eagles in a lot of ways because I do think that the Commanders' offense is just going to put points up, even if it's not as many as last week. But I don't know if Philly can do the same. I don't know if they can score with a run-first offense without a ton of passing game. But I'm going to take the Eagles. I keep on coming back to the fact that I feel like the Commanders are like a year ahead, maybe even 2 years ahead with this run of where they really should be. And I feel like that's eventually going to catch up to them, that they're maybe a little bit premature to be at this point.
It sounds like Evan was really close to picking the upset outright, and I was too. And like Evan, I'm going to wimp out and not do it. I just, in the back of my mind, he's a rookie. He's got to be a rookie at some point, right? He's got to have a mistake.
And everything is on his shoulders. Like, it's
and
not
that
like
defense is pretty good. Philly's defense is pretty good.
Jalen Carter, baby.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I think there's a mistake. I'm going to take Philly. I'm going to take the points.
You're trying to talk yourself into it as you're talking.
I thought of it.
I want to take the upset, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, I think the nice story continues. I sense a quiet confidence among the Commanders. I do respect Philly's defense. I think it's going to be a close game in the first half, but I think that Philly defense kind of runs out of gas, believe it or not, in the second half. And I think down the road, the Commanders keep putting up points, and they went outright.
So can I ask an aside here? Talking about the Commanders, the quiet confidence and all this stuff. Does anybody look at Dan Quinn any differently?
100%. I mean, I
have to admit I do.
Yeah. I always thought he was a decent coach anyway.
Yeah, he's probably better than I thought, but you got to turn that cap around.
Yeah, that's it for me. The cap. I mean,
remember in Indy in the airport?
I recognize him by his hat.
Yeah,
Paul wants to have an intelligent discussion.
I'm pretty
Bruce
sure.
and I are just fixated on wardrobe.
Just turn your hat around. You're Cal Shannon.
Who's here for the nonsense more than me? Come on.
Deuce and I were sitting in the Indy airport coming home from the combine, and we're sitting down to eat some lunch, and I see this guy at the bar, and I jokingly said, "Oh, it's Dan Quinn," because he had the head backward. It was
Dan Quinn. I just look at it.
Gotta look.
He took the Falcons to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Kyle Shanahan
probably should have won it, right? But I think that's what a lot of people said. He's one of your guys. You know, he's a Dan Campbell light. You know, he was buoyed by his offensive coordinator. So he's within a ridiculous sequence of plays from winning a Super Bowl with the Falcons. That's no easy task.
Right.
He goes to Washington, which has been the worst franchise in football for 30 years. And here they are in the NFC Championship. I have to admit, I think
to admit, too.
maybe he's got a little bit more going on than I gave him credit for.
Yep. I just think if he just turned the cap around.
I know.
I thought it was just an uninspired retread hire.
Yeah, no,
right, sure.
no. I think
he definitely knows how to hire offensive coordinators. That's for sure. But also I would say the other thing though with him that separates him, in my opinion, from a guy like Dan Campbell is Dan Quinn can call a defense. Yeah. Like Dan Quinn is a legitimate
did well in Dallas, right?
defensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in Seattle, he was he was the guy. So like that's the difference. I think. But I hope is the same thing with Vrabel. Is like those guys could be defensive coordinators as just as easily as they could have been the head coach. So it's not just a culture hire. Like, you're not just a rah-rah guy. You have that ability.
All right. The 6:30 game is on CBS and Paramount Plus. It's the 13-4 Bills visiting the 15-2 Chiefs.
Chiefs by 1.5.
Ooh, this
Close
makes it
one.
easy.
Yeah, I'm going for Buffalo on this one. I think it's their time. I mean, just at some point, since Kansas City can't keep winning these games like this, like where they're just doing just barely enough to get by, I think it's Josh Allen's time. I think they're confident. I think they got something to prove, and I'm going to take the Bills.
My heart wants to take the Bills, but the fix is in for the Chiefs. So I'm going to take Kansas City and the Swifties. And I don't know, man. They just, until they lose, I just feel like I can't pick against the Chiefs, and they just find a way to win these games. And I just wonder if that's going to happen again. But I think Buffalo's the better team. Like, I think they're the better team on paper. It's just something about Kansas City.
Yeah, I understand where Evan's coming from. I think Buffalo is just flat out better. And I think that they will win this game. I do think it's their time, as Mike said. That said, you better not let it be close at the end.
Mm-hmm.
If you do your little thing that Joe Brady did last week and allow the other team to get back in the game, you're not going to luck out, because Mahomes will find a way to get that 2-point conversion.
Yeah,
so don't leave it up to a play or two at the end, because Mahomes will make it. I have unbelievable respect for Andy Reid and Mahomes.
Kelsey will catch that ball.
And Kelsey won't drop the ball that Mark Andrews dropped. So do what you did in Buffalo. Instead of kicking a field goal to go up 5, you go for a 4th and 2 when you're up 2, and you make it a 9-point game and end it. That's the mentality that Buffalo needs to bring. Will Sean McDermott and Joe Brady do it? I think they will, but if it's close, I don't like it.
Folks, this is your lock of the week. Kansas City wins the game outright.
Ouch.
Covers that 1.5. I'm not saying easily. I have a lot of respect for the Bills, but their window is closing. They cannot upset the laws of nature by winning a Super Bowl, and the best way to not win a Super Bowl is not get to the Super Bowl. So the
Don't
Chiefs,
go with that window thing.
the
huh?
Chiefs do me a solid. They beat the Bills and then lose in the Super Bowl. But we'll deal with that.
I was going to do one of those lame gifts and send it to you after they won last week. Go and just put the window open. If I knew how to do that, I would.
Yeah,
I'll teach you.
So but in all seriousness, the Chiefs know how to win. They know
There's
how
no
to win.
question about that.
Absolutely
And
agree
I
with
think
that.
they've been getting better every week over the last month.
I agree that they know how to win, and that would worry me a little bit if I was a Bills fan. I mean, if I was a Bill fan,
Yeah.
everything would worry me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Brady. It's like you said, Paul. I thought you laid it out so well. It's like you got to score. And
You
keep
mentioned you were
scoring.
going to look at the weather, and you didn't do that.
Sugar plums.
You didn't do that.
Well, it's not going to affect my picks.
Philly, it looks like the weather's going to be fine. And looks like both games it should be
That's my guy. You got
relatively fine.
There we go.
All right.
got the barometric
Good enough.
pressure.
I
on?
have to run. There's still another 15 minutes. You guys,
Take your guy first.
I can't. I gotta go.
Just-
I gotta go.
just punch
no,
him up.
I really
Right,
have to
punch
go.
him up.
Just
You
hold
do it, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
What do you got, Christian?
Hey, happy 30th anniversary with the New England Patriots organization. I keep track of these things, Fred, and I want to call you and wish
Freddie, you listening to this? This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. This is why we can't have nice things, Christian.
It's not your fault.
What are you
Christian.
saying?
It's
Today
not-
is what?
30th anniversary. He's been with the Patriots for 30 years.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk about it? Because now Fred's gone, so we can.
This is great.
Thanks, Christian. You
This
did
is
nothing
great.
wrong.
Christian, thank you very much for calling in.
We tried.
We tried.
Fred gave it one of
Bill.
the.
He's coming back.
Oh,
Oh,
hold
he's
on,
coming
hold on.
back.
He's
He's
coming
coming
back.
back.
He's
Oh,
coming
oh,
back.
he's coming back.
I forgot my wallet.
Oh.
Well, it's been brought to our attention that this is your 30th anniversary with the organization.
I think it's actually the 25th, but thank you, Christian.
No, 30th.
Yeah. No. It
Fred,
happens
I
on the
just wanted
25th.
Oh, okay.
But thank you, Christian.
Oh.
I appreciate that. You've been with me from the start.
Fred, you're the
so he's
best.
keeping
You
track.
created such a community and a place for us to connect. And you put up with our complete and utter nonsense. I mean, we put up with yours too, but that's okay. Just wanted
He's
to
nonplussed.
say,
He has a
I
meeting.
love you too, and love the show.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, Christian.
Thank you, Christian.
All right.
All right.
Well, Paul, should we tell the audience what was going on right there?
That is the most Fred reaction to.
So I knew the
ever.
reaction was going to be what it was. Obviously, we had Christian, deliver that news for us because we knew Fred would be all pissy if we did it ourselves and made a big deal out of it. But it's the most Fred thing ever.
30 years.
To just get up and walk out.
Yeah. Oh, he's like, no, it's the 25th.
Like he has a meeting at 2 o'clock. I happen to know what his meeting is. He has a meeting at 2 o'clock. Like, it's 1:48. What, you got to prepare?
Maybe.
Oh, you don't want to be late.
Please.
You're damn Skippy.
Well,
so thank you, Christian, for doing that.
Yeah.
And I picked Christian to deliver that news because I am relatively certain that he has been part of this show since its inception.
That's crazy.
So he would know that it's 30 years for
Could we
Fred.
do a little like Kirsch story time now? In his
Kirsch
honor, since
story
he's
time?
not here.
About when I came in to do my.
Well, just if you got a story about
do
I
my
got
errand?
one, or how you got
when
here.
I came
or
in to
getting
do my
hired.
interview and he had a like a meatball stain on his shirt, and I was like, I'm going to be able to work here. I don't have to dress up. I can do this.
Yeah. I'll tell my story real quick because I've told you before, when I got this job, I really needed a job. I needed a job bad. I was freelancing. I was just desperate for work. And, all of a sudden out of the blue, Fred calls me. Andy left, and I was like, who are you going to hire? I've been blogging about this team for 10 years on my own. Emailed Fred, and, we had conversed a couple times, and I was in like an auto parts store, and Fred called me. He's like, hey, why don't you come on the show? So I came on the show with you guys, which was crazy, and here I am sitting with Paul Perillo and Eric and Fred. They're the famous, the great PF. I knew you more as the PFW guys after you'd rebranded, but so a couple weeks didn't hear, and the funny thing was, then finally I'm like, hey, I emailed Fred. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, so finally then HR calls, and they're like, well, we want you to come in for an interview, and I was like, well, I just did a 2-hour radio show. Does that count as an interview? So I went in with Fred, and we were actually waiting for No Socks to come up, and a little nervous, like I said, really needed the job bad. And he's like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? And I was like, oh, I was just down Cape Cod at my mom's house. And he's like, well, where are you from? I was like, East Dennis. And he's like, I grew up in East Dennis. And so right at that point, I was like, ooh, this is we started talking restaurants, we started talking beaches, and so at that point, I knew it was well. So I'm
that
Vrabel.
wasn't part of this part of the interview.
No, they were already cutting you out of it. But no, I
was actually away when you came up for that second interview.
Well, and one other side note was that after I did my radio appearance, Paul, we wrapped the PU show, and Paul looks at me and he's like, so what happened your sophomore year? And I was like, what? And I'm thinking, oh, my hockey stats, because my hockky stats, it was like, played a bunch my freshman year, and I only played half the season my sophomore year because I had mono. And so I was like, oh, I have mono. So that was kind of a funny aside. But I'll always be so, grateful to Fred for giving me this job because, I really needed it. And I, was getting ready to go work at the grocery store or something, trying to figure out how to make ends meet and provide for my family. So, no, it's pretty cool. 30 years. That's amazing. And what a trailblazer he's been with the paper and the radio and the internet shows and everything that he's done. So I'm glad we got to say all this without him here.
Yeah, because he would be mad at us.
Right.
Yeah. You got anything? You got a story?
I have a couple, but one of
yelling at you.
Yeah, but one of them that goes like I had just started here, and I came out to my desk, and on my desk was pads of football plays. And you could to pad plays, you could act, it had the formations and you could draw on them. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, who put these on my desk? And he comes out of his office and he goes, oh, Evan, I put those on your desk because I thought maybe you'd want to pad some plays. And at this point, I didn't know him well enough to he's my boss. So I was like, oh yeah, totally.
I'll get right on it, sir.
Yeah, right.
Do mesh.
And as it turns out, he was
mesh.
Did you draw power?
Definitely, probably busting my chops, and I was too nervous. I was too nervous to at that point to bust back. So
he's got these pads, and I don't know if he wants me to actually come up with different plays.
Yeah, I was like, am I supposed to draw? Do I have to present these to him in a week?
My help?
Like you always clean out his desk, and he's like, "What is this?" Give it a
like, I thought you'd want those.
But you've been with him how long? What, 25 years now? 26 years?
26 seasons, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, and Fred's always been great. What you hear on the radio is, that's not that far off of what he is, off. He gives us a lot of freedom to do our jobs, which I really appreciate. It's probably the biggest reason why I stayed here as long as I have, is because they make it very easy to work. And I would say Fred and Matt both do that very well. So I'm not as happy about Fred as you guys, because my entire time here, and I've been looking for something that maybe, as much as I enjoy working here, maybe something a little bit more lucrative, shall we say. Right? Shall we say. And somehow he finds that opportunity for everybody else who's worked here, but not me. So I'm not as high on Fred Kirsch as everybody else. Sorry.
Yeah, the one other thing I like about Fred, though, is he's not afraid to play the fool. I mean, he's really obviously very sharp, very smart guy, but has a way about, being able to be the butt of the joke and kind of appear aloof and goofy, but at the same time, when it really gets down to brass tacks and there's serious stuff going on, he knows what's going on. He knows how to push things, push the envelope, as he's done many times.
And I'll just say, behind the scenes, there's been a lot of sort of memorable things that have gone on here, with the organization, whether it be, the Not Done Network at the Super Bowl in Minnesota, or Brady Night, just this past, the level of involvement that Fred has at the highest level. And I'm not saying this, it's not like a joke like what Mike and Tony do to me on sunshine.com, that the highest levels of the organization, the stuff that the Kraft family not only wants Fred's input, but respects Fred's input on, would blow people away.
Yeah.
The amount of things that he's had his hands on, and not all of them have been home runs. Sometimes we try some things. I remember we had a digital gold club, DVDs and stuff like that with behind the scenes, special, kind of like a version of the newsletter that we were trying, special interviews and stuff. Didn't work.
Yeah.
They're not all home runs, but most of them have worked.
Hey.
From the paper to the website,
the
to
world's original podcast,
the podcasts that we do. Fred was instrumental in all of it, and the Crafts really respect his opinions on all of this stuff, and that's why they've given him the latitude that they do.
Yeah, I think he's the best ideas man that I've maybe ever been around, where might have even a half-baked idea yourself, and then all of a sudden he brings it out into this whole big thing, and it's pretty crazy. I think that Brady Night's kind of a good example where that was something that was just sort of kicked around, and then all of a sudden it becomes this amazing night for the organization. And I'll just say really quickly too, just allowing me to do Catch 22 with Barth in when I got here, and giving me that opportunity to bring the podcast with me was just tremendous. I really appreciate that.
That's a great
deeply.
example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
John Rook's playbook that we did for a long time, and I know, some of the things have changed over the years. He had a fantasy football podcast that he did for a while.
Don Banks, right?
With a couple of Don Banks would do a sort of an NFL at large, column online in podcasts. Like I said, some of them lasted for decades. Some of them, didn't work. But the fact that he's always willing to try some different things, and the Catch 22 is a great example of it. Yeah. So, again, 30 years is not an insignificant amount of time to be at one organization, and this is a business that chews people up and spits them out.
Yeah.
So I consider myself lucky to have worked for him for as long as I have. I say these things because he's not here, and he won't. He won't
knew
throw it
how
back.
long we just went on and on about him.
Yeah, he wouldn't be happy about it.
No.
But
we love him.
He's been a great boss for a long time for me.
And he's kissed Tom Brady. Let's jump over here. One last call on the TPX hotline with Mark in Connecticut. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Evan. I was trying to get a hold of you yesterday, but I know you guys were really busy on the Catch 22 podcast. I just had one real quick one for you, which you had posted on Twitter/X. Jacoby Myers, great guy, great chain mover on third down. Any possible way that we could try and pry him away from the Las Vegas Raiders with a trade or something of those lines?
Yeah, I posted about
Mark.
that maybe a little bit tongue-in-cheek just because they brought back Josh. So I was like, why don't we just get the whole band back together? But really, when you think about it, Jacoby Myers last year had 1,000 yards with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell throwing him passes in Vegas. The Patriots haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Julian Edelman in 2019.
Wow.
On the roster, like, period. Like, not even just a 1,000-yard receiver here. I think Devontae Parker was the only other guy that's had in his entire career has had an 1,000-yard season.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so to
Nelson Aguilar never got no.
Just to kind of like put your nose up to
Juju?
to Jacoby, I think now I'm not saying he's the savior. He's obviously only a piece and not the piece. But with the Raiders also changing regimes and potentially changing offenses and all that kind of stuff, I just thought, maybe he would want to come back here with Josh.
You know what just stands out to me about him is just reliability, and I think that's a big thing that was missing around here. And I know we could get into talking about, and look, we want dynamic guys. I want speed. I want to really get a 1 and a 2 and guys that move the needle. But I think there needs to be an element of Jacoby Myers, what he brought with just tough catches on third down. You knew he was going to be where you needed him to be. That really didn't exist last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's a volume slot. Like we talked about it earlier, like that's not really what we see DeMario Douglas being, but he is a true volume slot.
Yep.
And you need the Devontae Adams or something like that on the outside to be the more dynamic guy. But he's one of those guys that you could target 125 times in a season and he'd be able to play 17 games.
Yeah, I like Jacoby Myers, always have, always will. I'd like to do better.
Yeah,
that's all.
I wonder if his dad still listens to the podcast. Sorry, Mr. Myers.
I love Mr. Myers.
Probably, yeah, probably still listens. But
I love all of the families that we've heard from over the years. Again, that's a testament to Fred.
Yeah, Marcus Jones.
People care about.
There you go.
People care about listening to us.
All right, well, I think that's going to do it for us. Stay tuned for the big NFC and AFC championship games this weekend. I'll be in an AHL hockey game for the first one. No problem with that. But thank you for listening, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.
The world's original podcast.